story. 4 minutes after 10 is the time. A very good morning to you. I can't help wondering how long we think the Labour Party is going to be able to argue that we inherited the worst. Do you think they'll still be in power in 25 years' time, and they'll be coming out, we inherited the worst economy since the Second World War? I mean, I certainly get closer to being the truth than all of the constant references back to that note that was left in jest by Liam Byrne, I think, about there not being any money left. So there we are. We're looking at a political landscape where one party's claiming they handed over an economy in tip-top form, which may not resonate with many people looking at their mortgage bills, for example, at the moment, and the other party claiming they inherited the worst economic situation in living memory. Hey-ho, on we go. 5 minutes after 10 is the time. I'm going to begin with this story of sentencing. I don't know how helpful the phrase keyboard warrior is. I think it overlooks the fact you wouldn't call someone sending poison pen letters a pen war. I mean, genuine hate mail or stalking or do you see what I mean? You don't have to segue into physical violence in order to be responsible for physical violence or to be susceptible to accusations of physical violence. But keyboard warrior always seems to be a little bit too euphemistic. But writing in a community Facebook group on August the 3rd, a woman from Church Lawton in Cheshire wrote, "Don't protect the mosques, blow the mosque up with the adults in it." I heard yesterday that this woman had been jailed for 15 months, and I heard the judge explain, or I saw the judge's explanation, that it was essentially designed to teach, he used the phrase, keyboard warriors, a lesson. Another judge has called for the worst offenders in the recent riots, the recent unrest, to be charged with more serious offences. Rioting would carry a sentence of 10 years. And I do see some sense in the idea that the people who actually attacked police officers should be punished more robustly than the people who wrote insightful things. I could be wrong about that. I'm going to open the phone lines shortly, and you can tell me what you think. So there's 5,100 members in this so-called community group on Facebook. I don't know what sort of community it is. Well, actually, I do, don't I? I've looked at them where you can make comments like this and not imagine that anybody who is also a member of the group would be offended. She pleaded guilty to, and this is important, sending a communication to convey a threat of death or serious harm. And it is specific. She was commenting on a photograph of the clean-up effort in a town where violent rioting had taken place outside a mosque, and she said, blow the mosque up with the adults inside it. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequence. We all know that. We also know, there's a great piece by Robert Shrimsley in the Financial Times yesterday. You can find it on my Twitter feed. I mention that because it's not, as far as I could tell, it's not behind a paywall, and it is absolutely brilliant, hitting precisely the points that need to be hit about people who see this, we used a great phrase, a really beautiful phrase actually, about the kind of people that see it not as an obscenity, but as an opportunity. For those who sow mistrust in the state, the riots were more an opportunity than an obscenity, which is, of course, why that hashtag Farage riots proved so popular and so sticky throughout the period of unrest, as it's being somewhat euphemistically called. For those who sow mistrust in the state, they moved effortlessly from trying to turn it into a exercise in hatred of Muslims. This woman, of course, calling for a mosque to be blown up with the adults in it, to then attacking the British police by claiming either that they were keeping things from the public or that there is some sort of double standard in place in a country where police forces are routinely found to be institutionally racist. Apparently, what that means on the ground is that they go in softer on people of colour. That's what institutional racism against people of colour means. If you are so morally corrupt and politically opportunistic that you probably struggle to tie your own shoelaces. But anyway, I'm getting distracted. The reason I'm getting distracted is because I haven't got a completely firm opinion on this. She pleaded guilty to sending a communication to convey a threat of death or serious harm. I mentioned that she pleaded guilty because that's why the sentencing has happened so quickly. If people are going to not plead guilty, then the legal process is much longer. The assembly of a prosecution, the assembly of a court case takes a lot longer. And I mention that because I think some people are genuinely confused when liars and opportunists throw phrases like two-tier policing around. So someone might respond by saying, why hasn't this person been sentenced? Or why hasn't that person been sentenced? To which the answer is that their lawyers, their legal representation has not made it clear that they are going to plead guilty upon their first appearance in court. So the wheels of justice will turn infinitely quicker when a guilty plea is on the horizon than they would when it isn't. And the fact that she pleaded guilty is, I mean, usually something that can be offered up in mitigation. I don't know that that has happened here, but the judge has come down on this woman, Julie Sweeney, like a ton of proverbial bricks. He described her comments as inflammatory and disgusting. You should have been looking at the news and media with horror, like every right-minded person. Instead, you chose to take part in stirring up hatred. You were part of a Facebook account which had 5,100 members. You had a big audience. You threatened a mosque, wherever it was. It truly was a terrible threat. He added that the sentence was severe because, and I quote, a message must be sent out to people. So-called keyboard warriors like her have to learn to take responsibility for their language, particularly in the context of the disorder that was going on around the country. So what that judgment tells us, what that teaches us, is that if this had been posted in different circumstances and different contexts, the legal response would be different. This is why we have judges, as opposed to a sort of written rules, an algorithm into which you enter the details of a crime and a sentence pops out at the bottom of it. You have sentencing guidelines, but you have judges, human beings who use intelligence, who deploy intellect and reflect context, circumstance before deciding upon a sentence. And this is a point that I missed. This is about what is called exemplary justice. And it took my mind back to 2011 and the riots that followed the shooting by the Metropolitan Police of a man called Mark Duggan, a career criminal called Mark Duggan, who the police believed had a gun and therefore shot him. That is the essential state of facts after various inquiries and investigations. And I'm going to mention Twitter because it is kind of relevant to some of this conversation. I put out a tweet, and this is going back 13 years when, Twitter was nothing like what it is today, and I had nothing like the following or the response that I have now. But I was absolutely gobsmacked by a response to what I thought was quite an innocuous tweet about urging people not to go out and riot. I was much younger then. I presumed that a lot of my listeners were younger. I lived in the middle of the area concerned. I kind of thought I might be, somewhat pompously, you know me, somewhat self-importantly, I thought I might be able to dissuade or discourage some people from joining in the riots. And I can't find the message that I posted at the time, but the mode I deployed was to warn people about the consequences it would have if they got caught. Now, I had no idea that we would see people sent down for 6 months for stealing bottles of water at that point. But I did know that if you get caught up in a crowd, in a mentality, whether it's online, actually, as this story is, or in reality, or in on the streets, you're going to do things that you would never have done in any other circumstances. So if you found yourself in some of the looting that we saw during the Farage riots was done by people who they probably have never shoplifted, some of them. But, there is a shoe zone. Someone's kicked the door in. There's a bunch of fake Crocs on a stand in the doorway, and you can literally just walk in, help yourself, and walk out again. That temptation is one that most of us would find very easy to resist. We wouldn't find ourselves in that situation anyway, because we wouldn't be drawn to public disorder, public violence in the way that these people were. But they're doing something they wouldn't have done in any other circumstances. And I tried to convey this idea that you might go out and have a bit of a rush of blood to the head, do something really stupid that could then have consequences for the rest of your life. And I'm only mentioning it because the response was pretty horrible. It really took me by surprise. One of my first experiences of the kind of uncontrollable and unpredictable nature of social media. People were telling me how out of touch I was, how middle class I was, how white I was, how I had no idea, how angry people were, or what life was like in a different world from mine. And none of this, although it gave me pause, none of this, to my mind, justified rioting. But it spoke to me about a fragility. It spoke to me about a fragility that I'd never registered before. And a fragility of a society, about how close we might be to anarchy. And anarchy could be a sort of pogrom-style violence, Kristallnacht-style violence, or it could be undirected mob violence. It could be directed at police, it could be directed at shops, institutions, places of worship, people. But anarchy, I'd never really registered before those riots, which I watched more closely than I'd watched any others. I never really clocked before how fragile civilization is among populations. If you think about genocides, if you think about the story we were discussing yesterday about politicians and protesters and people in Israel protesting against alleged rapists being held to account, being investigated, because the successful dehumanizing of Palestinian people for those constituencies of the Israeli population has been so complete that they can actually essentially call for all protections of humanity to be removed from people that don't deserve them in their minds. So we're close always to anarchy, close to social breakdown. And that's why this sentence, the more I think about it, makes sense. Don't protect the mosques, blow the mosque up with the adults in it. But then you find yourself wondering whether it's wrong to feel sorry for this woman, because we have all posted things on social media, possibly after a glass of wine or a small sherry, that we would not post in any other circumstances. The online equivalent of getting caught up in a kind of mob mentality, the rush of blood to the head, which means you go into a shop and steal some shoes or steal a bottle of water, whether we're talking about 2024 or 2011, is something that I think you can understand. I would never in a million years write things like this, but remember that public figures, senior people, had sowed in the minds of women like Julie Sweeney the idea that that there may have been a terrorist watch list, that the public weren't being told the truth. Some people were posting on social media entirely spurious and invented claims about the alleged killer in Southport. You know all of this. So is it wrong to feel a little bit sorry for? Can you simultaneously recognise that the severity of the sentence is both right and necessary, but also feel sorry for her? I don't know. It's 18 minutes after 10. That is the story we are discussing today. The 15-month sentence for a woman who wrote on Facebook that don't protect the mosques, blow the mosque up with the adults in it. And the question is, I've given you an introduction. The question is, what do you think of that sentence. Listen, I've never posted a racist threat to kill on the internet. I've never stolen shoes in a riot. So I'm not for a minute. I just give me a ring and tell me what you think. Right? That's what I want to know. That is the detail, that you now know the story. I remind you of a couple of things, like the that great phrase from Robert Shrimsley in the Financial Times. For those who sow mistrust in the state, the riots were more an opportunity than an obscenity. The real victims of that opportunism from political figures and some media figures, the real victims in many ways are the obvious victims are the police who were attacked and the people in the hotels that they tried to set fire to, the people in the mosques that they tried to attack. But is it fair to see, here's a question for you. Is it fair to see Julie Sweeney as a victim of the kind of people that were posting absolute toot about the killings of those 3 little girls in Southport? Are the people, whether they got it from Andrew Tate's Twitter feed or elsewhere, are the people who disseminated provocative embellishments, provocative lies, provocative untruths, who knowingly sought to stoke up public hatred, are they partly responsible for the actions of people like Julie Sweeney? Or is that giving her too easy a get out? Okay, hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 60 973 is the number that you need. So that's the question. You know the details. None of us, it could have gone different ways. Different judges, different days. And that's the point. That's why it's worth a phone in. You didn't need to be in court to hear all the evidence. She pleaded guilty. We know what she did. What do we think of the sentence? 23 minutes after 10 is the time. 15 months in jail, although obviously she won't serve that long, for a hideous Facebook post saying, don't protect the mosques, blow the mosque up with the adults in it. And I'm asking you what you think of that sentence. I'll go to Lee first and then Nigel, although I doubt it's that one. But I'll read you a couple of texts first. This is a point many of you are making. Joe says, you can't help but wonder if a brown person had posted, let's blow up churches with adult Christians in, would they have been charged and convicted as a terrorist? This sentence does not go anywhere near far enough. Louise says, I absolutely do not feel sorry for her. Hate crime has to be stopped. You have to be accountable. Ignorance and impulsivity is not an excuse. Louise goes on, I'm surprised at you, James. This is the first time in 15 years of listening to you that I don't agree. I haven't said I feel sorry for her. I've simply said that I think some of the responsibility for what she's done must lie with the people that lied to her. And I don't know whether that is mitigating. The judge clearly didn't think so. Well, maybe he did, but it doesn't appear to have. Mo makes that point again. If it were a Muslim calling for a synagogue to be bombed, there'd be nobody feeling sorry. He'd have booked himself well, you go a little far there, accusing MI5 of torture, Mo. But I'd take your original point, certainly, about the apparent double standards. And Christian says, can you please stop calling them the Farage riots? It makes me so angry. It's pronounced Farage. You make an excellent point, Christian. My apologies. 24 after 10 is the time. So let's find out now what we think about this. Lee's in Dartford. Lee, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. The last text made me chuckle because I refuse to call him Farage as well. He's definitely a Farage. But anyway, I believe that 15 months is far too lenient, if I'm honest. I think when... Put it in context in my mind, you got Just Stop Oil protesters. Yes, they can be frustrating and annoying. They got 5 years, 4 years.
They were on bail. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's going to be pretty hard, isn't it, to see people who had a Zoom call planning some social unrest going to prison for longer than someone who was actively encouraging people to blow up a mosque full of adults, full of people.
I mean, I hadn't heard that report. About that Facebook post,
no.
And I've just left the office to go on some calls.
Okay.
And I pulled over hoping that I would have time just to quickly phone in and express my disgust because I see these posts not as bad as that, but a lot of posts, and I just can't believe what people are putting on social media at the moment, and the impact that that's having on people, and while that might be part of the reason for why that lady posted that, I don't think it's justification. If I was in a group of people out of an evening one night and one of my friends in that group threw a punch in anger at someone, and it caused some real injury, then I'm guilty of association. So as far as I'm concerned, this lady should be guilty of association in rioting. And
but that's a really powerful point, because if you posted something like this during a period where there was no rioting, there were no attacks on mosques unfolding, there were not people seeking to either set fire to them or then the crime would be different. That's the bit. That's what I was trying to convey earlier when I said that's why we've got judges. Because some of the stuff that comes in, Lee, when Sadiq Khan is in the studio, some of the stuff that comes into this studio is as bad as this.
Yeah.
But it exists in a different universe, doesn't it? Because there is not a mob out on the streets poised perhaps to attack a mosque. And also it only comes into me and him. It's not something that's been put in front of 5,000 people on a Facebook group. So you're right. She's adjacent to and potentially complicit in actual violence.
I believe so, and I think the broader point is I think it's scary that people believe that they can share these thoughts and threats on social media now without any fear of recourse.
And that is it, isn't it? That it is that winding back of the whole of society, because these things are not happening in isolation, and indeed you can't separate, for example, Julie Sweeney from Glyn Guest, a 60-year-old whose case is covered in the same article in the Times today, because as he was essentially attacking riot officers and she was posting her vile thoughts on Facebook, the way that the story is put together in the Times today reminds us that they are part of the same process, part of the same story. And if you want to dial this down, if you want to bring back decency, I suppose you could call it, then you need to come down like a ton of bricks on the indecent, whether it's happening online or whether it's happening on the streets. Nigel is in Leon C. Nigel, what would you like to say? Thank you, Lee.
Morning, James.
Hello, Nigel.
Been a listener for many, many years, and this is the first time I've been sort of motivated to call in on a subject. I think it's... Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a worrying thing we're seeing out there, a breakdown of certain parts of society and a sort of lack of consistency about punishment. I do believe that the judges at the moment are trying to send a very firm message out to these people, but irrespective of what sentence you put them away for how many years, what does it do about their beliefs? I mean, my problem is it's about educating some of these people about, what they're saying, burning down mosques. Why shouldn't this particular person perhaps be taken into a Muslim community for a while and educated about, well,
it's not either or. It's not either or, is it?
No, not at all.
We spoke earlier this week on Monday, in fact, to the Imam up in Liverpool, who has done precisely that, and we'll be speaking to him again. But you're right. I mean, the question here, in some ways, that I think you're nodding towards, whether we realise it or not, is who radicalised her.
Yes, exactly.
I think we know.
And how do we treat the root cause? I think, as you say, it's not one or the other. It's a complex solution, which the courts have a role to play, but there are other areas of society which have a role to play as well. And I do think that those that have the platform to speak out should speak out. Perhaps sometimes people don't speak out so often,
I worry
some of the imams are quite quiet,
Yes, some of the coverage in the media, really newspapers that have been incredibly, and commentators who've been incredibly clear about some issues, whether it's immigration in general or Islam in particular. I probably bear some responsibility for the ecosystem and the environment that you're describing.
Yes, I think so indeed. I think there's a huge amount of responsibility on the media generally, and I know LBC has covered, is covering that in quite some detail, and there's been lots of discussions over the last week or so on that. And I think everybody has to stand back and think of their role that they've got to play in this. And
I think you're right, and I don't think that is happening necessarily.
No,
here is a woman whose life has been thrown into complete turmoil, and her husband's life has been thrown into complete turmoil because she is his carer, quite correctly, because as everyone so far has agreed, the offence is vile. But it hasn't happened in isolation. She didn't wake up one morning and develop a deep distaste or detestation of Muslims. It has been fostered. It has been fermented. She has been radicalised. I might add that to the mix, actually, as a consequence of Nigel's contribution. Who do you think radicalised Julie Sweeney to the point where she would call on Facebook without realising how dangerous and offensive she was being for a mosque full of adults to be blown up? 0345 6060 973. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. 10:35 is the time. The fact that we are having this conversation shows that the preventative element of the justice is working, writes Jack. Hopefully, this is the start of people being held to better account for what they say online, as if they were saying it in person. I've often thought that. Graffiti. Sometimes we forget online is real. And in fact, IRL, in real life, is often offered up as a alternative to online, isn't it? It wasn't online, it was IRL, or it wasn't IRL, it was online. It's the same thing. I think this is a generational shift. Someone wrote it in graffiti on the wall outside your house, then it should, if someone wrote it on a Facebook page, it should carry the same legal weight. Erica talks of little people getting banged up and exploited by incitement from wealthy posh boys, while the Welshie posh boys remain safe. And you refer to a politician who I think is from Farage's outfit, suggesting that people crossing the channel in dinghies should be essentially sort of left to perish. And Helen responds to me, but also I think to Erica, by saying, I think you're patronising this woman. She's an adult. She absolutely should be punished. I'm not suggesting she shouldn't be punished. And you talk of cause and consequences, and I agree. But what's the cause of the cause? Who? I mean, you would say who radicalised her? And a lot of people pointing out that if a Muslim were to have called for the blowing up of a church or a synagogue or another place of worship or a shopping centre, then probably in the context of riots happening, then probably it would be very, very clear. 10:37 is the time. I look at I don't know, maybe it's the photographs. You just sort of, when you get stripped away from the rush of blood to the head, these sad, ordinary people engaging in extraordinary, disgusting behaviour. They're going to have an awful lot of time to reflect upon it. Zahid is in High Wycombe. Zahid, what would you like to say?
Well, hi, James. I think you kind of made my point a little bit already. But,
sorry. What were you going to say?
You just said it just now. But imagine if I was, I'm a Muslim, and
right.
if I wrote in my local community group, go and blow up the local synagogue with all the Jews inside, can you imagine that? What debate would we be having? It would be. I don't think it would be the same.
Well, it's not. I mean, you're obviously right, but it's very hard to compare apples with apples because we would need to have. There would need to be attacks on churches happening already in context.
Right.
There would need to be attempts to burn down buildings containing Christians or containing British natives, and because if you posted that in complete isolation with no likelihood of anybody ever acting on it.
No, but this was acting on it, wasn't it?
Precisely.
Yeah, but I mean, in a mosque, I go to a mosque, and I just go to pray. But if somebody attacked it, I'm a school teacher.
Yes.
What have I done? I was born in England. I could get killed. My son's a police officer. If he was in there, he would get killed. The consequences of saying those things are quite severe. We just say, they threw bricks at the police. So police are human beings. If one of them hit on someone on the head, cracked his, police are not machines.
No, that's. You just glossed over that.
Serious things.
You've stopped me there a bit. I'm a teacher. My son's a police officer. This woman. This is why I talked about dehumanising in the context of history, in the context of a much broader palette. This is a consequence of people like you being dehumanised in the eyes of people like her.
It is because this is not
happening by accident. There's a plan, not in somewhere that people are doing this, because it does make it easier to kill Muslims. Not so much in England, but in the world. When we hear 100 people died in Gaza or somewhere,
yes.
It's not the same as if 100 Israeli babies died. I mean, there's a difference.
It is to me, although I get called. It is to me. A drop of blood is the same. But yesterday I got called anti-Semitic for being as heartbroken by the death of Palestinian babies as I would be by the death of Israeli babies. But you describe an embedded double standard.
I'm just saying that Muslims, in a sense, have been dehumanized. You don't think of it as a civilian. In a way, the police are suffering as well. We hear this,
yes.
Like throwing rocks at the police and did this to the police, a 12-year-old. But they're human beings. They've got families and children as well.
You should say Zahid's son, throwing rocks at people like Zahid's son, throwing rocks at people like, Alison's husband or John's wife or Bob's daughter or Imran's sister. I mean, do you see what I mean? We do dehumanize. And I agree with everything you said, but I don't know why I keep thinking of the man who lied about the school shootings in America, because I've seen him popping up on various social media feeds recently. Alex Jones, the man who lied and has been handed hundreds of millions of pounds worth of libel judgments for claiming that parents whose children were murdered at a massacre at an American school in Sandy Hook are somehow actors or hoaxers or liars. And a lot of the people who claim to care about white children in the context of conversations like the one we're having today are in cahoots with Alex Jones. Nigel Farage appeared on his programme after he'd maligned the dead children, including lots of white children, if you think that these distinctions matter. He continued to collaborate with him online. I've seen other people recently who are kind of breathing oxygen back into this character, resurrecting him. So how can you claim to care about the lives of children when you're in cahoots with somebody who rode roughshod over their memories several times, frequently? Thank you, Zahid. Daisy's in Thurrock. Daisy, what would you like to say?
Hiya, yeah, I just thought I'd ring up because, because I just kept thinking about kind of the chicken and the egg kind of analogy.
Yes.
And maybe kind of back to what you were saying about people thinking you're out of touch if you think, well, someone couldn't make me, like a political figure couldn't make me have such strong opposing views against a collection of people. But then you go back and forth and say, well, those feelings already exist, and they've kind of maybe been played on.
Yes.
But then also you wonder about, and then you kind of go, well, like, that wouldn't happen to me. Someone couldn't influence me to that degree. A political figure of any, I'd have my own.
Or a columnist, or
anyone, columnist, someone with a political agenda that couldn't make me want to do something like that and put it online. But then you go back and forth between kind of, well, what was her upbringing versus my upbringing? Where did she grow up? What influences did she have around her? So in that, but then it still doesn't make me feel sorry for her. Because I think...
No, I chose those words very carefully because I wanted people to actually ask themselves that question. I do not feel sorry for Julie Sweeney, but I am open to the suggestion that she has been led to this place that she bears full responsibility for ending up in. But we often ask the question, who radicalised them in other contexts and other crimes? I don't think it's wrong to ask it in this one. I really don't. I mean,
and hopefully it will have a wider impact to show that the online crime and hate and spreading these kind of ideas and thoughts. And it's been so lovely to see the opposite happen.
Yes, it has.
People coming back against, and that made my heart swell because
me
it
too,
makes
actually.
you feel desperate in a desperate situation, and then for the opposite to happen, it makes actually something horrific and something really terrible that you wish never happened. I hope that they're realising that they won't win, and there are more people to go the opposite way.
That's beautifully put. That is beautifully put. Because online, and this is relevant to your original point, you can perhaps get the impression that everybody agrees with you.
Agrees with you.
Because it's all you ever see. It's all you ever see. So she's there on a community group about which I don't know much on Facebook, but she clearly doesn't think that what she writes is going to be particularly pungent or offensive to the people that will see it. And you can do this online. You can completely surround yourself with people who agree with you.
and unfortunately, as people have seen with these riots, whatever. But it does happen in person. But I think when they think they're the majority,
that's empowering. That's emboldening, and that's why the images you refer to were so powerful. Because once this initial rush had passed, when people thought they were going to be turning up to join enormous groups of fellow racists, they found themselves instead in groups of 3 or 4 with 500 or 1,000 people on the other side of the road, reflecting what I would describe as the moral, never mind the silent, the moral majority and the values that you and I and all my callers today actually believe in, but not necessarily all my listeners. Thank you, Daisy, because Keith's been in touch. Not that one. He says, there you go again, the great unaffected preaching to the great unwashed when you've never ever lived a bottom feeder life. And you actually think you're popular, but that's easy when you vet your callers and only let about 1 in 10 through who disagree with your opinion. Fraud. So thank you for that, Keith. It's 10:45. I feel responsible for all my messages as an adult, writes Simon. At 16, I could argue that I didn't really understand responsibility. 10:48 is the time. The general consensus, I presume people like the last texter I read out would disagree, is that this sentence is either fair or not severe enough. I'd probably personally go with fair. And the only quibble I have, if that's the right word to use, is the question of radicalization. I don't think that's the wrong word to use. You have been brought to a place where you don't stop yourself, even if you find yourself harboring these thoughts, you don't stop yourself from publicly disseminating them. The fact that you want to see a mosque full of humans blown up, and you do it in public. You make that statement, that plea, in public. You have been radicalized, haven't you? You didn't used to be like that. And the process of radicalization is probably a lot more complicated than the kind of analysis I can do in 60 seconds on the radio would allow. 0345 6060973 is the number you need if you want to join this conversation. Hussein is in Birmingham. Hussein, what made you pick up the phone?
Assalamu alaikum. James, I really respect your show, the way you handle all the callers, whether they agree or disagree with you. I think you're one of the... Don't
use up all your time being nice to me. I want to hear your point.
This is important.
But I'm grateful.
You're one of the forces that are driving the country to unite us, and with a lot of forces trying to divide us at the moment. I think with Julie, I think she just jumped on the Islamophobic bandwagon.
Yeah.
And I think the personalities, journalists, politicians out there that are responsible for driving that bandwagon, which she's jumped on. I mean, from what I know about her, she's a carer, so maybe this was a way of escapism. But personally, I don't think she should have been sentenced. I mean, she's going to go to prison. Is she going to be less or more radicalised? She needs her her thoughts to be liberated. And I think she should have been educated with some kind of referral to prevent.
I remind you that there are 2 cases being heard at the same time, even though there's only one person in the dock. There is the punishment for what she did, and there is the contextual role of the sentence in society at large. So I could come with you if it was confined to the first bit, if it was merely a response to what she has done in her life. You then would have to deal with all the people asking what would happen if it were a Muslim calling for a church to be blown up or a synagogue to be blown up. But you sound bright enough to do that. The point at which I depart from your position and disagree with you is the point at which the judge is mindful of sending a message to anybody minded to behave similarly in the future. And a referral to prevent or a fact-finding mission to her local mosque, or sitting down with magnificent Adam Kelwick, who we spoke to on Monday up in Liverpool. All of those things would not send a message, a suitable or sufficient message, to the next Julie Sweeney, to the next person looking at their political heroes' self-recorded films and then thinking to themselves, I might just stick something on Facebook calling for your mosque to be blown up, Hussein, if indeed you go to a mosque.
James, I hear what you're saying, but do you know what the most powerful message would have been?
Go on.
For Julie to have gone and educated herself about Islam.
Yeah, but there's no deterrent.
Hold on.
I'm holding. I'll hold. Sorry.
Sorry. And then for her to convey the message to all the people she knows exactly what Islam is about, and obviously then change her thoughts about, we're living in a nation where we come together. Coming together makes us stronger. It makes us greater. This is.
But what message is sent to? Here you go. I'll read you something from Danny. He's very unhappy. He goes, "Don't you dare tell me I've been radicalised, you bleep. I'll decide if I hate Muslims or not, and I very much do, along with all the BS that you get paid to spout for 3 hours every day." So how is what you suggest for Julie going to prevent or deter Danny from going a little bit further in his next post and calling for a mosque to be blown up?
Because it's an issue which has affected her psychologically. And
he's been affected psychologically as well, but how do we undo the damage that's been done by not punishing severely, robustly?
By having sensible, educated conversations.
I'm going to disagree with you. I like I said, because there's two things going on. That would be best for her, and it would be more compassionate, and I would leave you to argue with all of the people asking what would happen if someone from a different background made a similar claim about a different place of worship. But the judge is clearly making an example of her in his own words, to teach other people a lesson. Pour encourager les autres, isn't it?
She's never ever broken the law, though, has she?
No, not before. But that, again, I don't think that's pertinent to the question of her being made an example of, so that anybody else thinking of sending messages like this in similar circumstances will think twice.
I think the judge should make an example of the people that have been driving these divisions.
Yeah, but they're too clever, aren't they? And that is almost your point.
Okay.
Isn't it?
I will leave you in peace.
Well,
that's the message. That's the message I would like to convey.
And you've conveyed it very well, and it's very generous of you. But as I say, for the reasons outlined, and maybe actually I'm comfortable with the sentence, even in the context purely of her own behaviour and experience. But you cannot set aside the role that exemplary justice is playing in this process, and not least because the judge explicitly said so. Hussein, take care. Steve's in Fareham. Steve, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello,
I'd agree that I think that as unpalatable as it might seem as a sort of libertarian, and I'd like to think a right-thinking person, whatever that is, I think the sentence is fair. And I would like to come to the point that you made about radicalisation or even perhaps the word conditioning. We've sort of had, I feel, a form of sort of social conditioning going on for the last couple of years, or certainly since Brexit. I think that my concern is that even now, after these sentences have been handed down and continue to be handed down, we are seeing posts on social media and speeches being given by certain individuals in the world of social media, or ex-politicians or current politicians, effectively almost making out that people who are being sentenced like this are martyrs to free speech.
Yeah.
And they're making the point about free speech. And free speech is not the freedom to call for the murder of people. I
wonder how they'd respond if it was their house, if it was their address, if it was their church. I mean, and also, what does somebody like, not to make excuses, but to expand upon your point, when Julie Sweeney sees Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, give or take a few bucks, saying civil war is inevitable, he's feeding and sharing her worldview.
Yeah, and you make the excellent point that these people are, whether they are, we can debate on, that's a subject for another call, whether they're clever, but they are, in a sense that they're very mindful of what they say, certainly since arrests have started being made. I think people are either going missing now, or have gone a bit quiet. But we are seeing posts, we are seeing things still coming out as I say, regarding free speech,
trying to turn it. Well, this is the great line from Robert Shrimsley in the Financial Times. For those who sow mistrust in the state, the riots were more an opportunity than an obscenity. And he tracks precisely what you described, to go from the Islamophobia or the incitement of violence against Muslims through proven lies, through to attacks upon the police, through proven lies about the police, and then to this notion of two-tier justice and assaults upon free speech, which ignores the historical fact that freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences.
Absolutely, and I think what we're seeing are the consequences of probably years of it started gradual and it's been ramped up, and now here we are. And as I say, there are still people out there that are trying to conflate this whole issue of violent disorder, threats to kill, with the innate freedom of speech, and I think that's really, really worrying that these people aren't winding their neck in. Really.
I think Stephen Yaxley Lennon went absolutely bananas, didn't he, when a newspaper gave away details of where he was on holiday. And yet it is supporters of Stephen Yaxley Lennon that seem to object to the idea that this woman should not be punished so severely for specifically calling for an actual building, a real-life building with people in it, to be blown up. I think that's the way into it. If people are genuinely struggling, imagine if there was a rampaging mob on the streets of your town and someone went on Facebook and told 5,000 people to go and blow up your house while you were in it. That's the point. And I think at that point, I'd hope that everybody just sort of goes, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that. You're right, though. There is definitely a conversation to be had about radicalisation. But the problem is, in the context of more obvious acts of terrorism, and recently it's more likely to be Islamist terrorism than anything else, then when you talk about radicalisation, it almost sounds like you're making excuses for the terrorists. And you talk about radicalisation of Julie Sweeney, and it sounds like you're making excuses for her, or as Helen said earlier, patronising her. But I don't. One of the things I've learned over the last few years is people genuinely believe this bilge. I don't think a lot of the disseminators of it do. I don't think the people whose careers rely upon spreading hate and sowing division, particularly anti-Muslim hatred, I don't think all of them actually believe it, but a lot of their followers do. I just thought previously that it was just an excuse for a more generalised racism, that because of the September the 11th terror attacks and what has followed, people who just hate everyone who's a different colour from them felt that they could get away with articulating it more about Muslims than they could about others. But there is a deep belief among people that has been very carefully fostered, watered, and now harvested by people whose entire public profile depends upon hatred of Muslims. And, of course, more broadly, hatred of people of colour in general. I just want to read you something. In fact, I never know how to phrase this without possibly sounding a bit priggish, but some of the concerns will be sincere. This is what I was trying to convey when I talked about the difference between the con men and the conned, or the radicalisers and the radicalised. So, although these phrases are nonsensical and deliberately provocative and designed to promote the perpetrators of these phrases, people genuinely believe what they're being told. You need proof of that, then I've got a referendum to sell you. And so, whether it is the idea that people are receiving disproportionately high sentences, that there's two-tier justice, that it's somehow suspicious that the justice is being delivered at breakneck speed, that people are being imprisoned for simply being present or for simply expressing opinions. None of these things are true. The best place I can send you to get the detail that you need to either educate yourself or arm yourself with what you need to educate others is a blog by The Secret Barrister. You can find it at their website, thesecretbarrister.com. I've retweeted it from my account. And it is brilliant, cutting through the online myths. And it drew my attention to something that happened in the Court of Appeal in 1970 following a riot in Cambridge. And I found this incredibly helpful. Sentencing policy for public disorder, mass public disorder, has essentially followed this position ever since. It's been consistently punitive. This is where I disagreed with Hussein, actually, down in Birmingham. I'm going to read it to you in full, and then we're going to change the subject so completely and so violently that you'll probably do a double take or get whiplash as a consequence of how quickly your head turns. When there is wanton and vicious violence of gross degree, the court is not concerned with whether it originates from gang rivalry or from political motives. It is the degree of mob violence that matters and the extent to which the public peace is being broken. Any participation, whatever, irrespective of its precise form, in an unlawful or riotous assembly of this type, derives its gravity from becoming one of those who, by weight of numbers, pursued a common and unlawful purpose. The law of this country has always lent heavily against those who, to attain such a purpose, use the threat that lies in the power of numbers. In the view of this court, it is a wholly wrong approach to take the acts of any individual participator in isolation. They were not committed in isolation, and as already indicated, it is that very fact that constitutes the gravity of the offence. That's what I was trying to convey at the top of the show about both the fragility of civilization, the proximity of a form of anarchy, but also the societal impact of sentencing. I think that encapsulates it beautifully. But it's a brilliant blog by a brilliant writer. 6 minutes after 11 is the time. Okay. I would once have conducted the following conversation in a slightly... what would the word be? Don't be rude, but because I'm going to talk about Molly May and Tommy Fury. I'm going to do it for two reasons. The first is I can tell you that by all of the measures by which the popularity of a story is measured, the news yesterday that two people who you may possibly never have heard of are breaking up, they've reached the end of their romantic rainbow, is an absolutely massive story. I don't like to think of myself as a dog who gets wagged by his own tail. So the size of a story that I don't understand draws me towards asking you why that story is so big. Do you see what I mean? I'm interested in my ignorance and my confusion. What I would have done a few years ago is come across as a bit of a prat by going, oh, who are these people and what are their talents? I've never heard of them. He's not even a proper boxer. So I know that bit about him only because of who his half-brother is. His half-brother is Tyson Fury, and I have watched a bit of Love Island over the years, although not so much recently. So I think I would be performatively proud of the fact that I don't really know what they do. I'd have no idea why their love life is a matter of such enormous news. It appeared on my feeds with breaking next to it in capital letters. Breaking. Molly May and Tommy split up. LBC's website, I think it is probably, is it the biggest story on our website at the moment? It probably is. It's not quite, but it has been over the course of the last 24 hours. It's an extraordinary story. And then a colleague of mine who I respect very much suggested that for her generation, Molly May and Tommy Fury were as David Beckham and Victoria Beckham are for my generation, as in many ways, royals aside, the sort of biggest showbiz couple in the business, the biggest showbiz couple in the country. And I balk slightly at that because David Beckham was a brilliant footballer and Victoria was a Spice Girl. You know, so if you wanted to point at the source of their celebrity, it would be really obvious and immediate. The scale of their celebrity is a different proposition entirely. The scale of their celebrity is perhaps comparable. But if it was 10 years ago, I'd be a bit. I don't know whether I meant it. I don't know if you can think of any examples. Did I do it? I used to pretend to be proud that I had no idea who these people were. I'm not embarrassed that I don't know anything about them. I'm just a little bit confused. And one of the nice things about getting older in a open-minded way, have to catch yourself, don't you? You don't want to become closed-minded. You don't want the walls of your world to close in, your worldview to get narrower as you get older. But I think that the temptation to think that the stuff you don't know about must therefore be irrelevant is hard to resist. And I am now resisting it. I want to get into Instagram, actually, for example, whereas 5 years ago I'd be like, no, I'll leave that one to the kids. Instagram's important. I don't want to be. I don't want to press pause. I don't want to think I've reached the end of any journey. And popular culture is a large part of that. So, why? Why is the end of a relationship between two people who I think are best? I think I can loosely describe them as being famous for being famous. Can I do that? Is that a fair description? Why is the end of a relationship between two people who haven't achieved anything in the traditional context of either showbiz or sport? Why is this such an enormous story? Why? In fact, the best way to do this is to ask you why you care so much. So I work with people in their mid to late 20s mostly. Keith's a bit older than that, but you're not big on this story, are you? Is it? You are quite, yeah, okay. So that's someone mid to late 30s, and my colleagues in their mid to late 20s all were talking about this when I got into work this morning. And again, 5-10 years ago, that would have been the point where I started taking the mickey out of them. Whereas in fact, what it means is I'm out of touch. It means here is a large avenue of popular culture with which I am out of touch. Completely out of touch. And I don't want to be. So why? Why is this such an enormous story? And you can't tell me it isn't, because I can show you the statistics. I can show you the responses. I can show you every newsroom in the country poring over its online responses and thinking we need more Tommy and Molly May content. And I don't quite get it. And I will get it, and you'll help me get it, and it won't be new, and it will be as old as the hills, and it may well be the 21st century equivalent of what it girls were at the back end of the last century, or, of course, aristocracy, people who are famous simply for being famous. But why has this relationship, why has the end of this relationship garnered levels of attention that I, as a professional journalist, quotes, brackets, allegedly, close brackets, and former gossip columnist, remember, I cut my teeth in this business as a gossip columnist, writing about people who were famous only for being famous. I've got nothing on this one. This is, I don't know whether there's a point where you think, crikey, that popular culture vessel has completely passed me by. And the scale of the coverage, and crucially, the conversations in my office, in a newsroom. We've got stories coming in from the Middle East, stories coming in from Ukraine, stories coming in about the rail union, about ASLEF accepting an offer from the government that probably means the end of the strikes that have blighted the railways for the last 2 years. You've got Ukraine moving deeper into Russia. There's an extraordinary report in the Israeli media about the Israeli Defense Force allegedly using Palestinian people as human shields. We will actually be covering that at 11:45. But all of these stories, massive stories, unfolding in real time. And my colleagues were talking about the end of this relationship. And I'm out of touch. It's not, so I don't do the thing anymore where I would have laughed at them or criticised them. So just tell me about it. Tell me why this is such an enormous story. 0345 6060 973. And it's Thursday, so it's Mystery Hour next anyway. So we can safely say that apart from a conversation with an Israeli activist at 11:45 about these reports of the Israeli Defense Force using Palestinians as human shields, sending them into dangerous spots before the soldiers go in case there are explosives there or ambushes. We'll do that at 11:45, and then it'll be Mystery Hour at 12. So, Philly Boots, go on. This might be a nice one for you to break your duck on. You say, I've never really phoned James, but I always worry I don't know enough. I know a lot more about Tommy Fury and Molly May than he does. Molly May Hague. It's not William Hague's daughter, is she? Molly May Hague and Tommy Fury. Finally, James knows nothing and I know everything. I will ring him and educate him on 0345 6060 973. It is 16 minutes after 11, and I suppose that the question becomes, how has somebody who doesn't really do anything, as far as I can tell, how have they become so enormously popular? Molly Mayhague has 8 million followers on social media. As Nick said earlier this morning, that's not far off the population of London. And I've managed to reach this stage in my life with teenage daughters, not really knowing anything at all about them. And that's all I want to fix. Listen, we do 15 hours a week of radio. You can allow me the occasional indulgence. And this is one of them. What is it? Why is she so famous and so popular? Not for a minute suggesting that she shouldn't be. I just want you to explain to me why she is. I got one colleague that was actually in tears at the news of the breakup. And it just makes me realise how little I know. It doesn't make me think that anybody's overreacting or being silly. Someone described it apparently on LBC as like Jurgen Klopp leaving Liverpool, but for girls. And that makes me think, what am I missing? What don't I know? And when I don't know something, I generally ask you. 17 after 11 is the time. Amelia is in Brentwood. Amelia, what can you tell me?
Hi, James.
Hello.
So your producer told me that you know absolutely nothing about Molly May. Shall I give you like a quick rundown?
Yes.
Right. So Molly May was on Love Island, I can't remember, a couple of years ago, but she was one of the first like mega social media celebs to come out of Love Island.
Why?
And since then
Because Love Island's been on for ages. So why did she scale heights?
I don't know. She didn't even win it. She came second.
Right.
She didn't even, so it's nothing like that. I think it's just the way she has marketed herself afterwards. She's got her own fake tan brand filter. She, for a little while, was creative director of Pretty Little Thing, which is a massive women's clothing
I do remember that. And that she got into a little bit of trouble for suggesting that other people were lazy or something like that. I remember that story. That's
because
her.
She wrote a book. So I think it's the brand that she's built of this sort of classy businesswoman, which is really attractive to a lot of young girls.
Okay.
And I think what's really sad for me personally is I was 16 when Molly May was on Love Island. I'm 20 now.
Yes.
And I absolutely idolised her and Tommy. They were like the poster couple.
Did they meet on Love Island? Did they meet on Love Island?
They did.
Right.
And it was sort of love at first sight. She was in a hot tub. If you look it up on YouTube, it's really quite romantic.
Oh.
And it was like this beautiful, like, fairy tale romance, and we watched them come out and go everywhere together and look great and do all these amazing things. And then over the last couple of years, we've also seen it deteriorate. I think that's the danger you put yourself into when you put yourself out on social media and you want to share all the great times. I think there's a lot to be said in what somebody doesn't share. And Tommy has been a lot less. Because Tommy has been a lot less present on her social media recently, and it's kind of sparked, especially for a lot of girls my age, because there are a few rumours about him being with girls out in Dubai when he goes on these boxing training camps. When he had a fight literally a couple of weeks after she gave birth to their daughter, which a lot of people weren't very happy with. And I think it's really sad because a lot of girls my age can relate to the situation of like your first love where this relationship is so amazing and slowly watching it deteriorate as you grow older in those sort of mid-20s.
So the more plugged into this you are, the bigger a fan, if you like, you are of her in particular and the couple together, then if I've understood you correctly, in some ways, the more upset, obviously, but also the less surprised you'll be by this news.
Yeah, I don't think many people are surprised. I think it's just we all really feel for her because she's really relatable to so many young girls in a lot of ways. And I think it's a situation, I mean, I personally have been through a very similar situation recently where my relationship was deteriorated and ended for all sorts of reasons. And I feel like I really empathise with her at the minute.
And there's nothing new there, is there? In people are seeing reflections of our own lives in a sort of amplified way in the lives of very famous people. Can I read you something from the Daily Telegraph? Of all places. The Daily Telegraph writes, "It was Generation Insta's Charles and Di moment. The equivalent to the news in 1992, announced by the then Prime Minister John Major in the House of Commons that the Prince and Princess of Wales were to separate." And then they add, but with extra spray tan and bigger muscles. So in the context of your life, how big a story is this?
I think it's one of the like sort of trademark moments of my 20s for sure. I think it's really sad because they've been engaged since last year. We really saw this like big fairy tale wedding, like Katie Price and Peter Andre and the Beckhams, and they had all these big like OK Mag weddings. Like that's kind of what we were expecting, and it's just left left in tatters. And I think everybody really feels particularly for her and her little girl because Bambi I think she's about 18 months old, her daughter, which is really sad. They were just starting to build their life together. They've renovated a beautiful house in Cheshire and now it's just completely in ruins.
It sounds very wholesome so far. Sounds like a wholesome story. I still don't understand why she is so popular. No, but hey, that's alchemy, isn't it? Some people just cut through. Some people make connections with the public that other people don't make. And
I think it's just her relatability and her ability to market herself in the way that a lot of young girls can look up to. So
so is it that could have been me kind of thing rather than some well, sometimes in the past fame is it's alien, I could never play football like David Beckham, but probably I could have sung a bit like Victoria Beckham. So she doesn't look. It's not like I don't know, Scarlett Johansson. She looks like someone you could know or someone you could be.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the Molly May effect.
What's that? What's the Molly May effect?
Going for coffee in nice coffee shops. And sort of walking around Harrods, like window shopping and going to these big business meetings and dressing in all nice clothes. It's like they talk about when people leave Love Island, there's always a thing about signing a Pretty Little Thing deal, which hopefully is because that's what really propelled Molly May.
Okay.
And that's what they talk about propelling the other girls. So I think it definitely is that could be me. You feel like if you work hard, that's what you will achieve.
Yeah, so I'm right then. I should endeavour to find out more rather than just poo-poo the whole story because I don't really know enough about it. It could have been anyone. I like this a lot. Yeah. Amelia, and it's affected you personally in the same way that, people that we've never met affect us personally, whether it's Taylor Swift or Jurgen Klopp, who are, I suppose, more obviously talented, but that's got nothing to do with affection or connection. Thank you, Amelia. Hey, before you go, I wonder what the next thing you'll ring me about will be.
Probably Taylor Swift.
Well, she's back in town as well. 24 minutes after 11. Have we got to have a whole hour of this drivel, says Carmen. You see, that's what I would have done once, Carmen. I'd have taken something about which I know nothing and tried to turn it into the fault of people who do know a lot. But actually, it's my fault I know nothing about this. I am interested in popular culture. I am interested in the news. I'm interested in why some stories get bigger reactions than other stories. But I still don't know enough or as much as I would like to know about how this young woman has managed to connect with millions and millions of people. Most likely, having listened to Amelia, most likely other young women. 24 minutes after 11 is the time. Philip in Stanmore is not a young woman. Philip, what would you like to say?
No, I'm not a young woman. Thank you for taking my call. Okay, so I've got a few points on this, and I'll try and get through them as quick as I can.
Take all the time in the world, Philip.
Okay, thanks. Love Island took a bit of a bashing yesterday on, I think it's Matthew Wright's show, and I think it's unfair. So let me just quickly go through a few points. So, yeah, I do enjoy watching Love Island. I watched 2 series, and the main reason I enjoy watching it is it's escapism. I listen to LBC, I watch BBC News, I watch Channel 4. My day is filled with the cruelty and the madness of the world, whether it's Gaza, Ukraine, riots, the Tories, all the things that bring me down.
Yes.
At 9 o'clock, I switch on to Love Island, and it's complete escapism, and I love it. So that's one reason.
Good for you.
The moment that Molly May and Mr. Fury met was
Mr. Fury, is it to you?
Was
Mr.
incredible
Fury.
television. I mean, they met in a jacuzzi. It was electric. The tension, the desire in their eyes. It was really great TV. It was kind of an exciting moment. Molly May herself is a really lovely person. She's decent. She's relatable to young people. And it doesn't matter that she might not be a high achiever, whether it's in sports or politics or media, or she's not a singer or so forth. Does that really matter? Can't we be a fan of someone that is literally just a decent, lovely person that young people can relate to? The other thing
this is lovely. I don't know why, but you're cheering me right up. This is such a nice worldview. Don't spoil it.
Okay, so the important thing I also feel is that we need some romance and positivity and love in this cruel world. why... It doesn't have to come from someone that is super famous and a high achiever.
So how big a fan of her are you then? I'm just not that... I'm hearing quite big.
Well, not
more so the
I don't
programme. More so the
I
programme that spawned them, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I don't particularly follow Molly May, but I did get an alert on my phone because it was on major news, and I did feel generally sad. I think they were a sort of positive light. It was something beautiful you could hold on to when everything around you was just so absolutely cruel and depressing. Every time I watch the news and listen to the radio and so forth.
So it's like a real life story unfolding.
Yeah.
So she said something. I looked at this. I never thought I'd be reading this in the Daily Telegraph. And that's not a criticism of the Daily Telegraph. They're covering it for the same reason that I am. She said, "My nana struggles to understand my job because it's something she'd never in her lifetime experienced." And that's where I am. Unfortunately, I'm closer to her nana than I am to her. What is her job, Philip?
Well, she's part of that sort of celebrity set that people can look at, and as a young caller mentioned earlier, that she's relatable. People want to look at her and they want to emulate her lifestyle, and they see her as being a decent person. I think she's,
What's her job? What's her job?
Well, I think she promotes things, certainly on the promotes things, and she gets paid by advertising companies to sort of promote products and so forth.
By taking pictures of herself with the product. And I don't want to sound disapproving, or I certainly don't want to sound snobbish. I'll be plugging my Mystery Hour board game in half an hour, like there's no tomorrow. So it would be hypocritical of me. But I am going to labour the point. So let's pretend that you're her and I'm her grandma. And she says, my nana struggles to understand my job because it's something she'd never in her lifetime experienced. And you now explain to grandma what your job is.
I'm reaching people and I'm an influencer. So I hope to have a positive effect on millions of people that can look at me and understand and relate to me and feel that I'm a role model for them, even though it may not be the high intellectual status of, a politician or a media journalist or an athlete or a great actor. But at least that she's doing good. I mean, we've just had an hour of listening about women, a certain lady that was doing the absolute opposite and asking for...
So she brings warmth and positivity into the lives of the people that follow her, and that is why they follow her. I like this, and I think this is the right way to conduct the conversation. Yes, of course you can.
Very quickly. So the other aspect I also enjoy with the Love Island, and I think it relates to Molly May, is a community feeling. Perhaps you could relate it to the Swifties that we talk about now.
Yes.
So after an episode of Love Island, you can go on Twitter and you can enjoy the chat, and everyone's having a good gossip and a chat about the relationships and who's done what. I live alone. I'm single. I quite enjoy that community feeling.
Feeling part of something.
I can sort of sit on the sofa and to be honest, most of the chat is actually fairly positive. I don't really encounter any real genuine... I mean, there is occasional some nastiness, but generally it's positivity. And then with Fury himself, he got a lot of flack.
You could do a PhD in this, mate.
Yeah, I might give it a go.
Seriously?
Now, there was a hilarious moment when Fury didn't know what Paris was, and it wasn't that he didn't know where it was and what country. He had no concept of what Paris was. It could have been a car. It could have been... a sort of make-up.
Never heard the word before.
Yeah, he'd never heard the word, and he got a hell of a lot of flack for that, as you can imagine.
That's not his fault.
And then my sort of intellectual snobbery side wants to sort of pile in on that, but then part of me thought, well, again, bringing it back to the essence, the romance of this couple, which was what you held on to, the positivity. It was a romantic love story, and really. Can we just put the intellectual snobbery to the side and just enjoy two gorgeous people falling in love and lust? And so, I mean, I like to think I'm a fairly bright person with 3 degrees and all the rest of it, but I have to put that to the side and just enjoy the beauty of it. So when we hear that they split up, it's sad. It's sad. As that.
Good for you. Actually, a good friend of mine who is one of the cleverest people I know was listening to Amelia, actually, before Philip came on, and said, your first caller was excellent, insight, humour, and I didn't care at all about this at the top of the hour. I've really learnt something. Well, you've learnt a lot more now as well. And I like the unapologetic nature of taking pleasure in something wholesome, but I still don't know what her job is. I'm not doing the kind of what are the Beatles kind of faux High Court judge ignorance. I'll tell you something after the headlines with Thomas Watts about the first time I met a YouTuber, and something that I'm still a bit confused by. And this is not a conversation about how superior we are to YouTubers and influencers. This is a conversation designed to make us all better informed about a very real and very significant social phenomenon. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. It's 11:34. Daily Telegraph, Manchester Evening News, The Independent, the BBC, Sky News, ITV. Click here for more news, and on it goes. Cosmopolitan, Sky Sports are covering it. LBC is obviously covering it. The Sun has gone huge with it. The speculation continues. The Daily Record reports upon Good Morning Britain discussing it, and that's just page one of the Google search results for the end of a relationship that was announced yesterday by two people who I would suggest that quite a few people who tune into my programme every day have either never heard of or don't have a clear idea of who they are. And I want to have a clearer idea, and I already do, thanks to two brilliant jobs. Marion says her job is your job, but with a different distribution technology. I don't understand that, Marion, which is probably my fault. And another one, she works in sales. It's simple. What does she sell? 0345 606 0973. Can you put so the first time I met a YouTuber, I was still in the role of being a bit sort of snobbish and condescending. It's a natural reaction to things that you don't understand. And it's a reaction you should resist. You don't understand something, it makes you embarrassed, or you're intellectually insecure and therefore you think this is shallow. So you're sending me a text saying you can't believe that you're wasting your time talking about this. 8 or 9 million people follow this young lady. And as our first caller pointed out, she's enormously inspirational to an entire generation of young women. And as someone who is interested in society and in people, that makes her interesting to me. But I don't know what she does. And the first time I met a YouTuber, I was in a state of profound confusion about what do you actually do? And I just filmed myself doing things. I said, things like what? Do you do keepy uppies? Do you have a talent, juggling? Or no? I said, well, what's the last film you made? I was just going through a drawer. I said, pardon? I was just going through a drawer full of stuff. And now, of course, I have teenage children, and some of the stuff that they are enamoured of on social media makes absolutely perfect sense to me. Some of it less so. Neither of them, to the best of my knowledge, are particularly entranced by this former couple, Molly May Hagan and Tommy Fury. But if her own grandma doesn't know what she does, it doesn't seem to me to be a particularly embarrassing admission that I don't. 11:37 is the time. So in generational context, what is the job? What would they be in the 1970s? Who would be the 1970s equivalent or the 1990s equivalent? And the bit I can't quite get my head around is that they haven't become famous for being really good at something. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the bit that makes it feel, at least at first glance, it feels to me like a slightly different phenomenon from what has gone on previously. Sarah is in Chiswick. Sarah, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks for putting me on. I haven't spoken to you before, so I'm a little tiny bit nervous.
It's only me. I haven't spoken to you before, so I'm a little tiny bit nervous. There you go. It's all good.
Okay. Well, I won't be too difficult. But so I was ringing because we've been talking about who is Molly May, what's she done, why is she so famous?
Yes, and so popular as well.
Yeah, very popular. So I know about her through my kids because they all watch Love Island. My youngest is 21 and he's always known about Molly May and her boyfriend, Tommy Fury.
Yes.
So I did just look her up whilst you were talking about what has she done. And I note that she has been CEO of Pretty Little Thing. I know we've talked about Pretty Little Thing, but
this is a clothing company.
I think that is a massive achievement for a young woman under the age of 25 to be CEO of a clothing brand, to have contributed towards the design of her clothing line. So she has she's achieved quite a lot. She hasn't just been like an it girl in the 90s who's turned up at parties and appeared in photographs.
I'm being a bit devil's advocate. Name another CEO of a clothing brand.
I don't know. What's Victoria?
So that doesn't explain her fame then, does it?
It doesn't explain her fame. Well, I think it's because she was highly influential to a lot of young people about what it's like to fall in love and be together. A lot of people found that.
Are we of a similar age, Sarah?
Yeah, obviously.
So what's the equivalent from when we were 21? Who would have been the Molly May?
Well, there you are. I'm a tiny bit older than you, James, but not massively. So Charles and Diana, I think we all bought into that. They hadn't actually done anything apart from the fact they happened to be in the royal family.
Perfect example. That's such a perfect example because
so everyone thought, oh, they're so adorable, so lovely, and it all turned out to be crap. Excuse the language. But,
I will excuse it on one occasion. On one occasion, I mean, we don't like language like that in Chiswick. So it's the fairy tale romance then that explains a lot of this. If she hadn't fallen in love on Love Island, would she be who she is today?
I don't think so. I think that love bit was so strong. Yeah. It sold so much to so many people. It made a lot of young people feel that you can fall in love, and when it
everybody
happens,
loves a love story. Everybody loves a love story.
So there you go.
That is, and Charles and Diana. So I was teasing a colleague earlier for comparing them to Victoria and David Beckham, whereas you've gone straight for the king, the actual king.
Ridiculous. But they really did mess that up, and it was such a lovely love story,
And that's why the Telegraph actually alludes to it today, and in the precisely the same context, saying that if you have invested an awful lot in somebody else's relationship, even though you've never met them, whether it's Charles and Diana, or whether it's Tommy and Molly May, when they break up, it saddens you, it breaks up, it really, really upsets you. So you see, it's all making more sense with every call, isn't it? Except I know what an influencer is, and I'm not being obtuse. That's the word I've been searching for. I'm not being obtuse. So Russell accuses me of being obtuse and says her job is the same as being a model, but with a lot more dimensions than someone who simply looks good. Okay, yeah, I'm not being obtuse, but if I carried on saying I don't get it, now that you've said that, then maybe I would be guilty of obtuseness, if that's the right word. David goes further. He says, she sells success, James. The message is that wealth equals success, health, and happiness. The story is news because it shows a crack in the happiness. The PR will now focus on the sadness for a while to bed that message in, and then there will be a series of stories and maybe even a TV show of how she rebuilt her life to achieve happiness again. And you put it like that, it sounds like a story as old as the hills, which brings us to, of course, the tragic figure of Tara Palmer-Tompkinson, who Paul Oliver asks, what was her talent? What was her talent? And you're right, I did say it, girls, though, in my defence. I said the kind of... So I would write about Tara, and there was another one called Tamara Beckwith, and they were just sort of wealthy girls who went to a lot of parties. And somehow... gossip columnists, like the ones I worked for, anointed them with a celebrity that was arguably even less deserved, or not even less deserved, it was arguably much less deserved than the celebrity that these young people enjoy, this young woman in particular enjoys. Kim's in Ealing. Kim, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, Kim.
I'm quite embarrassed that I listen to your show almost every day, and the one day I choose to call it's about Molly May Hague.
Go on, what can you tell me?
So when you were asking who is she, what makes her important, I'm screaming at the radio because she's a social media influencer with 8 million followers.
Yes.
And I run a small business, and I would give my left arm, my right arm, to have Molly May talk about one of my products because I know that I'll be a millionaire overnight. If she talks
Does
about...
she carry that heft? She says, I really like this energy drink, or I really like this bracelet, and hundreds of thousands of people would then be likely to go and buy it.
Millions of people will be out there buying that. But it will be sold out within days just because Molly May Hague has said, this is a nice set of pajamas, or I really like this coffee mug, or anything. It will sell out. So she is a social media influencer. She has 8 million followers. If she tells them to go out and buy something, they will buy it. So she has a lot of power.
So no wonder you thought I was being a bit of a divot, because you put it like that. It's blindingly obvious. It's a bit chicken and egg, isn't it? Because she needs to achieve the fame in order to achieve the influence. But that is where the relationship, and I don't necessarily use the word in a negative way, the commoditizing the relationship has delivered ever-increasing celebrity and influence, and then you translate the influence into a very traditional transactional relationship between your fans and the products you endorse.
Yep. Ultimately, it's a financial transaction, and because she's worked so hard to gain this following, she now has a lot of value.
How do you work hard? Final question: how do you work hard to gain a following like that? Is it the amount of posting that you do, or the cleverness of what you post, or the quality of your content? What do you mean when you say she's worked hard to build that following?
So I'll be frank. I was talking to a producer, and I said Love Island, that particular season was one that I watched.
Right.
And I remember when she came on the show, and then she sort of fell for Tommy. I think there was always this sort of question mark over whether her feelings for him were genuine, or if she was doing it for fame on the show and to win, or what have you. But then when they stayed together for the many years after they left the show, and she sort of gained a following for being, well, one, genuine, and everything that she presented on the show turned out to be real. And then I think from that she gained a certain amount of popularity, and she was doing things that I think were relatable to young women, and young women saw her as almost like this idol that, she's just a regular girl who went on this show, and now she's managed to achieve so much success from just from living a relatively normal life, which then sort of gave her fame and I guess became less normal.
So it's utterly unremarkable to you. Makes absolutely perfect sense, and any confusion is swiftly dealt with unless it is fake confusion, in which case the allegation of being obtuse is completely fair and accurate.
Yeah, I guess. And I guess that's why the next generation now feels so much like they don't want regular 9-to-5 jobs, because they see people like Molly May making millions from just posting videos on TikTok.
Yeah, and long may it continue. Do you want to mention your business and we can see what kind of influence I have?
No. Thank you very much.
It's 11:46. And you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. We move from the, not the silly, but we move from the unserious to the deadly serious after this. 11:49 is the time. I'm not sure there's ever been a more crunching gear change than the one we are about to undertake, having been immersing our toes in the kind of shallowest end of the news agenda. We now move with a heavy heart to the deepest. Mentioned yesterday on the programme a couple of times that potentially as a consequence of the Israeli government's determination not to let Western news organisations into Gaza, the ability of people outside to get clear pictures of what may or may not, what is or is not going on is harder than it would be in other circumstances. An extraordinary report reached me last night from both a non-governmental organisation in Israel, an NGO called Breaking the Silence, the executive director of which we shall hear from shortly, and the same story in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. And the story alleges that Palestinians are being routinely used as human shields, or possibly that's not quite an adequate description. I shall let my guest tell you the story himself, because I am joined now by the executive director of Breaking the Silence, and I suppose we should begin with a question, if I may, about what your organisation is and what your organisation actually does. Nadav Weiman is on the line now. So why was Breaking the Silence set up, Nadav, and what is its purpose?
Yeah, hello. So we're an organization of ex-soldiers that serve in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, what we call the territories, and we have one thing in common: we're against the Israeli military occupation. We are using our testimonies, the operation that we took part in, the commands that we got, to explain people in Israel and around the world what is the Israeli occupation, so everybody could resist it. And our organization, by the way, started during the Second Intifada, when IDF soldiers had to do very harsh things to suppress Palestinian violence and uprising. But again, and ever since, we're publishing reports about what's going on, and especially now in Gaza.
And so all of your members are military veterans, are former members of the IDF?
Yes, we are 1,400 soldiers, men and women that serve in all of the different sectors and different units of the IDF.
And what is the genesis of your latest report then? When did this alleged practice first come to your attention, and how have you conducted your investigation into it?
Yeah. So in every operation in Gaza and the West Bank, soldiers are coming to speak with us, and very quickly after this operation started, soldiers approached us and talked about this protocol, which is widely used in the IDF. And at the beginning, I've got to say, I didn't really believe that, because it's a protocol that was stopped by the Supreme Court in Israel in 2005. Back then, it was called the neighbor procedure, basically taking a neighbor of a Palestinian that we want to arrest, saying, you will knock on the door, not us, IDF soldiers, and if you get shot, you will get shot. And so that was stopped in 2005 because it was basically using Palestinians as human shields. And now a soldier came to us and told us, and then another soldier, and another one. And then we start hearing it from different units, different times, but it's all inside Gaza since the first month of the operation, which means it's, as I said, a practice that is very widely used. And I've got to say, you are right. Human shield is not really covering the entire situation. Basically, IDF soldiers are taking Palestinians from the humanitarian corridor inside Gaza, putting on them IDF uniform, in some cases even GoPro cameras, and telling them, go into the tunnel or into a house. You will sweep it. And we will see if something will happen to you. And after that, we will enter.
An ambush or a booby trap, most obviously, which they would then trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's amazing about it is our testifier told us that after some of those Palestinians were doing that job for a couple of days or even a week. And after they finished, they were released. And after they were released, our testifiers understood it was Palestinians without any charges against them. They are not members of Hamas unless we won't send them back home to their families.
So a random Palestinian being dressed in an IDF uniform and sent into a potentially lethal situation in order to alert the real soldiers to the danger ahead.
Exactly.
If you mentioned GoPro cameras, have you secured footage of this? Does your investigation include actual video?
We don't have videos.
Right.
But a couple of months ago, Al Jazeera managed to publish videos from a GoPro camera on one of those Palestinians. And I thought, by the way, that it's going to cause havoc over in Israel, that it's going to be a scandal that everybody is going to talk about. But the Israeli media didn't really talk about it. Until now, this is a very important article in Haaretz. And this is another part of the fact that there isn't really conversation in Israel about our practices in Gaza, because our media is not talking about it. Military correspondents are not picking this story up.
Well, you can imagine that is compounded and magnified enormously outside Israel, because we, in the Western media, have to rely upon whatever comes out of your country, whatever comes out of your media. How many people have you spoken to? How many of your sources on this are making allegations regarding things that they say they have personally witnessed?
Quite a lot. I don't want to name the number because there's all kinds of things around that.
Okay.
But quite a lot. And I've got to say that the reporter, Yaniv Kobovich from Haaretz, managed to bring a lot more soldiers that they're his sources. And that was the moment I was surprised. Because we understood it's not a couple of units, it's not a couple of officers with bloodthirsty, I don't know what. It's a very common used protocol in the IDF.
I should ask what the IDF have said in response to your investigation.
The IDF said that it's not a protocol and it goes against IDF practices, but I'm sorry to say that IDF spokesperson, they have this AI generating responses to this kind of allegation, and it happens to us a lot. A lot of times when things are being published about IDF soldiers doing things against IDF commands, IDF spokesperson will say the problem is that the soldier weren't really aware of the protocol, and now we're speaking with them, and that's it. That's like the common mantra.
I'm just going to read the quote that they've given to the Guardian in this country, or it may be a repetition of what they told Aretz. The orders and directives of the IDF prohibit the use of Gazan civilians captured in the field for military missions that endanger them. Have these two investigations operated in isolation then? Is it a coincidence that you have been exploring similar territory at the same time?
Yeah, because yes, it was two separate investigations, but think why? Because you have hundreds, maybe thousands of soldiers that were exposed to this protocol. And they want to fight Hamas because they want to defend Israel, or they want to fight Hamas because they want to release our hostages, or they want to fight make their family secure. Doesn't matter. But they saw something that goes against everything we were brought on as a democratic citizens in Israel, right? But again, there was silence about that.
One soldier had been told that Palestinian civilians were being used to replace the dog units that search for explosives because, I quote, too many dogs had died. That's from the Haaretz report. I wonder if I may ask you a final question, Nadav Weiman, and that is a question about the journey from being a good soldier who doesn't question orders and who does what he is told to being what you are today. How hard is that journey to make for you and your colleagues?
I've got to say, I came from a very military family. I served in the special forces. My two older brothers served in the special forces. My father was a deputy battalion commander, and my grandfather was a battalion commander in 48, and before that, a major in the British Army, actually. So for me, it wasn't even a question. I need to go to the most combat unit that I can be in. But after you finish training and you're being sent to the West Bank, after so many years of believing that that's what I need to do to protect Israel, and then you find yourself as a police officer, right, enforcing military law on civilians more than anything else, you understand that it's what we call security. It's basically controlling Palestinians. Because if you really want to secure Israel, so no settlements, right? So no home invasion in the middle of the night or all kinds of things like that. You need to fight terror. But you fight terror a small part of the time. Most of the time, you protect violent settlers and you enforce military law on Palestinians. So I think that if you're a human being with a heart and two eyes, it is impossible to come out of the army and not want to fight the Israeli occupation.
And it's a full-time job for you now.
Yes. I joined Breaking the Silence from the same reason I joined the IDF. I want to protect Israel. And I think this is protecting Israel. So yes, it's a full-time job for me.
You may not want to answer my final question. How has it affected your relations with your family members?
At the beginning was quite tough. My father called me a traitor and fifth column and all of that. And one of my older brothers said that his friends died in action because of our organization, which wasn't true, obviously. Sure. But years of arguing politically every Friday dinner and investing a lot of efforts, all of my family members are supporting Breaking the Silence now. So I think it was hard years, very hard years, I can say. But it was worth it because that's what I want. I want the same change in my family, like the same change I want in my society.
Nadav Weiman, the executive director of Breaking the Silence, thank you. A group, as Nadav explained, founded by Israeli combat veterans to document military abuse and to end military occupation in the West Bank and Gaza, telling us about his investigation, which has unfolded alongside another investigation by the Haaretz newspaper, alleging that Palestinians are sent ahead of troops into buildings or tunnels that need clearing. And you can read more about that either on their own website, on the Breaking the Silence website, in the Guardian newspaper in the United Kingdom, or, of course, on the Haaretz website as well, the Israeli newspaper. 12:01 is the time. So we were in the shallow end, and then we went to the deep end, and now we're going back to the shallow end because it's Mystery Hour after this.
This is LBC from Global. Leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
It is 4 minutes after 12. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where Mystery Hour is upon us. Your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. It's fair to say that it sits in rather stark contrast to the other 14 hours of the week, but just like the other 14 hours of the week that we hopefully spend together every week, it is entirely interactive. I am nothing without you. In fact, there is no Mystery Hour without your mysteries. If you do not tell me your questions, and that involves ringing 0345 6060 973, then there is no opportunity for other people to tell me their answers. And that involves ringing 0345 6060 973. And without questions or answers, there's no show. So it's all on you, in fact. I'm just the sort of MC of proceedings rather than the architect or the driver. And if you want to get involved, you know what to do. How dare you, James, says Jamie. Mystery Hour is not shallow. Whereas Mike says, I don't know about it being the shallow end, James. Surely Mystery Hour is the jacuzzi, which Natasha has picked up on that line during our conversation about Molly May. Natasha Devon, of course, will be with you on LBC at the weekend. She noted this. We just introduced this sentence into public discourse. It was a beautiful fairy tale romance. She was in a hot tub. It's not exactly Cinderella, is it? But there we go. You can win a board game. Did you know that? Do you know you can get the Mystery Hour board game in Fenwick now? So John Lewis and Fenwick's, so, as well, of course, as online at mysteryhour.co.uk, probably the best place to go. But if you are a bit tight, you can win one by providing the best contribution of the week, as adjudged by me. My favourite contribution of the week will win a Mystery Hour board game. Exciting developments in the board game world are afoot. There is going to be a booster pack later this year, and in fact, it will be a booster pack which not only augments your original Mystery Hour board game, which you can, of course, find out more about at mysteryhour.co.uk, but it hopefully is also going to be a sort of game that you could play without the board as well. So I've mentioned that to you before. Other people discovered that for themselves, just almost using the cards as points. So we'd be able to add to that as well. But anyway, it's all on the way. And the terms and conditions, because this is a real competition on a real radio programme presented by a real radio presenter. This isn't some sort of, making it up as we go along exercise. So we've got terms and conditions, and you can find them at lbc.co.uk. I think that's it, isn't it? Should we crack on? Is there anything else? Have I forgotten anything else? Don't look anything up. That's the only real rule. There were loads of rules when I started, but they've all sort of drifted away through a combination of lethargy and forgetfulness as it goes. I used to be quite cross about repetition, but I can't remember what happened at 10 o'clock this morning, never mind what happened 10 years ago. So highly unlikely that there's going to be any attempt to police the crime of repetition. But obviously, Roxy and Eleanor answering your calls, and if you pop up with something that we can remember having dealt with in the very recent past, then you'll be politely invited to slingo your hooko. Anne is in Lee in Manchester. Anne, question or answer?
Hello, James. It's a question,
Hello,
please.
Anne. Excellent. What is
Hi.
it? Hey. What was that? What was that? What was that? What was that?
Oh, that's an email coming through.
Okay. Is it important? Do you have to do you have to deal with it? I can wait.
No,
Okay.
absolutely not. I'm on my unofficial lunch break.
God, they never give you a moment's peace, do they? Carry on, Anne.
Right, so I'm quite interested in the reflex action of yawning.
Oh.
So my question is,
you're on the right show.
People... Well, I have been yawning whilst waiting,
Yes.
whilst hanging on.
Sorry about that.
For you. So at what age do people, children or babies, become aware of others yawning around them and respond?
It's very contagious yawning,
kind.
isn't it?
It is, yeah.
We've done that. We've answered that
say...
question. We've answered there. It's a lovely question to answer as well. It's a fascinating thing, the reasons why yawning is contagious. But at what age does it kick in? We haven't done that.
Yeah, because I only have to say or think of the word.
I'm going to shut me off now.
Yeah.
It's not very good, really, because
so what age?
You'd think that presenting a radio programme, or indeed being live on the radio from Lee in Manchester, you'd have thought the adrenaline would have kicked out the yawning, but no. She's gone again. I can't believe it. Are we keeping you up? Are we keeping you up, Anne? I do apologise. So what age? When does the yawning become become contagious? It's a lovely question. Thank you. Johan's in Cardiff. Johan, question or answer?
It's a question, James. Good afternoon.
Carry on.
I would like to know automatic doors, the types you get in office blocks and buildings and so on.
I am familiar with the concept and indeed the reality of automatic doors.
Why do they open extra slow if you approach them too fast?
They don't, do they?
Of course they do if you approach them too fast, because I need to know there's a legitimate reason why I'm walking faster. It might be...
They don't open. They open at the same speed, however fast you're travelling.
Oh, no.
Yes.
If you approach them too fast, they open super slow. And
they don't. You just think they're so... It's psychological. Are you being serious, just to be clear? You're being dead...
Yes, no, it happens to me every day.
Yeah, but it's just you're in a hurry, so it feels slower.
No, it's a fact. They do.
It's not a
slower.
fact, mate. It's not. Honestly, how could it possibly be that it measures your speed before you get to the door and then decides to torture you?
That is my question exactly.
No. Now, I'm interested in the psychological element of it. It's a bit like why your bladder starts letting you down as you get closer to your own front door if you've been holding it in for the entire journey home, because some message, that's true, because there's a message being sent from your brain to your bladder saying, any minute now, lads, any minute now. And so your bladder starts sort of preempting. But it's not true about the doors, you silly sausage.
I'll
put it on.
If you put that out there, let's see how many people answer back.
All right, then. Well, you're only allowed one answer back. I don't think it's likely to crush my switchboard under the weight of contributions. But is there any... Why does it feel like, and that, of course, leaves the door open. You see what I did there? That leaves the door open for the possibility that it's true. But why does it feel like the doors are opening more slowly when you are in a hurry? 0345 6060 973 is the number. From Johan to Ronan. Ronan's in Glasgow. Ronan, question or answer?
Question, James.
Carry on.
So, ahead of the release of the new Alien film, I was watching one of the films in the series last night.
Yeah.
And there was a scene where they blast the body of a dead crew member out into the vacuum of space.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to know, would my body rot and decompose in space, or would it just float there endlessly?
Whoa, that's a pretty gross question, Ronan. So would your body decompose in space?
Yeah, pretty much. You're stumped.
Well, there's no atmosphere, is there? So presumably you need... It's like rust. You need oxygen to decompose, don't you?
Yeah.
And there isn't any. So no, my answer is no. Your body would not decompose in space. But Ronan, there is only one way to find out.
Great.
I'll put it on the board. So, I mean, and what happens to it? 0345 6060 973. I like it's three great questions there. If, indeed, as quite a few of you are telling me, Johan's question turns out to be a lot better than I originally thought. It shows what I know. Yawning doors and space. That's something for everybody, isn't there? Mark's in Sheffield. Mark, question or answer?
Question, please.
Carry on.
Why is it when you set your alarm in the morning to go to work or do something you're not really particularly bothered about doing, when it goes off, you could turn it off and drop back to sleep in a second?
Yeah.
But if you leave that alarm on at a weekend and you forget to take it off when you've got a day off and it goes off...
You don't even need the alarm, do you, Mark? If you wake up at 5 minutes to the alarm time on a work day, you can drop straight back off to sleep again. But on a non-work day, that's it.
You're up and you're about and you're wide awake and you can't get back to sleep even though you've got a lie-in.
Yeah, I think, do you know, I think we might have done this one before, but I can't remember. It might be one of the ones that's never got an answer, Mark.
Oh, that's good.
But I recognise it. I was on holiday a couple of weeks ago and you wake up and you look at the clock and you think, oh, marvellous, I don't have to get up. And then literally 4 seconds later, you're getting a bit antsy and, I might just make a coffee or I'll just check my phone or I'll read my book. And this morning, for example... I woke up 1 minute before 7, so 60 seconds before my alarm goes off, and I'd fallen back to sleep by the time it went off. In that 60-second window, I actually went back to sleep because I got woken up by the alarm.
But why can you go back to sleep when you know you've got to get up?
I don't know. Could you do it on when you were younger? Because I could do it when I was younger. Saturdays and Sundays, I could stay in bed till lunchtime when I was younger.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't work anymore. So it's an age thing as well.
Good, yeah. And my sons are the same. They're in the teens, early 20s, and they can sleep till gone dinner time if they're given the chance.
What a great phrase. I could sleep till gone dinner time. Those were the days, eh?
Oh, God,
I miss it. I miss it. I really do. Right, I love that question. But as I say, it may be that it's one of the ones we should have like an archive for the ones that have come up more than once and never been fully answered. But there it is, mate. So we've got quite a bit there. Psychology going on. I thought with the doors, it looks perhaps not. Yawning. Biology, decomposition, and space travel, decomposition in space, and then the alarm. So why don't you want to lie in when you can lie in, but you always want to lie in when you can't? It's 12:15.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
It's 17 minutes after 12. It turns out there's a bit of mystery hour folklore attached to the question about lions. Paul in Notting Hill, who seems to be some sort of unofficial mystery hour historian, for which I'm very grateful, says, James, that question was yours. You asked it ages ago, but you didn't get an answer. Lots of people have tried to answer it, but you dismissed them all. That doesn't sound like me, Paul. So my memory was correct, but not as reliable as Paul's, it would seem. Graham's in Grimsby. Graham, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on, Graham.
Okay, I've recently had to go to the local registry office and register, unfortunately, passing away.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. The registrar took all the details, and it literally came off a laser printer, so it was just kind of like just a standard printer that came off.
Yeah.
But she said the documents have to be signed by a fountain pen. Is there any significance of why births, deaths, and marriages have to be signed by a fountain pen?
You can erase everything else. Would it be that?
I don't know.
Because with do you not remember? Was it Papermate who made a biro that you could erase? I'm sure they had a little.
But surely, if it,
go on.
Yeah, but surely if it's coming off a printer, because she just used a laser printer to basically go off, that's going to deteriorate over time. And I said to her, is it because it's tradition? Is it because it's the ink? Is it because...
she didn't know. She didn't know.
She didn't know. She said, it's what we have to do.
It could just be a tradition, because it is. But I suspect the permanence, because it's called permanent ink, isn't it? If you remember when we used to buy cartridges, well, it depends how old you are. But it was probably that. Have you checked with other people? Is this definitely... it's not just in Grimsby?
With other people, and it's... No. I've checked, and she said we have to register... She said it's a national thing. We have to register all births, deaths and marriages using a fountain pen.
I can't remember. I don't remember at all, but there it is. Okay, you're on. I shall try and find out. Why do we have to register all births, deaths and marriages using a fountain pen? 0345 6060 973. Thank you, Graham. Stephen is in Manchester. Stephen, question or answer?
It's a question, James, please.
Carry on.
I've been prescribed medication this week.
I'm sorry to hear that. I might be glad to hear that, because it means things are going to get better for you, doesn't it?
Well, it might be a long-term thing, but anyway.
Right. Well, good luck.
But I'm having the usual side effects, which I won't go into for people who are eating food at the moment. But anyway, that's by the by.
Gastric side effects, is it?
Quite possibly.
Yeah,
so what I want to know is, obviously you get the leaflet in the box that says these are common, these are not so common, these are rare. Why can't they produce medication that doesn't have any side effects? They're well known. So why, the technology must be there and everything must be there.
Why do you say it must be there?
Well, I'm assuming it must be.
Well, look, if it was there, they'd do it, wouldn't they? They're not doing it just to troll you. They're not making you...
It's my question.
but it's not. It's a silly... Well, respectfully, it's a silly question, because if they could make something that was nicer to use, they'd make it. I mean, maybe, unless it's cost, unless it's cheaper ingredients that are going to make your bum explode.
No comment.
No, and some medicines don't have side effects, remember? So they can make medicines that don't have side effects, which is why I'm being led to the conclusion that the ones that do have side effects have to have side effects, because the stuff that works is also the stuff that causes the problems.
Possibly.
Yeah, you're on. I wish you well, Stephen, obviously.
Thank you.
I hope, if nothing else, I hope it gets better with time. 21 minutes after 12. Why do they make medicines with explosive side effects. 03456. So even if it's inevitable, I still want the answer to the question as to what it is that's happening that renders it inevitable. Mike's in Lewisham. Mike, question or answer?
Hi, James. Great to speak to you.
Likewise, thank you. What have you got? Question or answer?
I've got a question.
Good.
So my question is, I'm just wondering, why is it that we...
Can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
Thanks. Can I thank you for sounding more curious and inquisitive than any other caller we've had on Mystery Hour in recent weeks? Even before we've got to your question, you went full on with, why? That was a real pleasure for me to witness, so thank you for that.
Really?
Yes.
I'll take that.
Carry on.
So I'm just wondering, why is it that we find certain sounds soothing?
Yeah.
Like, I said to the producer, it's not in the top of my list, but for me, like the ocean is really soothing. I can look at the ocean, but also I can listen to it.
Same. Be careful. Be careful. I don't want to start Anne yawning again. So let's not get too soothed on this. Go on. What else?
Yeah. So like the ocean, like rain, like on a rainy day, can be quite soothing. Or construction site, the sounds, even though it sounds quite chaotic. Like the producer said, she finds it the opposite.
A construction site.
Yeah.
What?
I don't know whether it's like the chaos of all the banging and the clanging and the drilling sounds.
Soothing.
It's like works out to have less the chaos,
okay.
like a soothing.
If you're far enough away from it to sort of dilute into white noise, I could understand the point you're making. But there's a building site near me that has got. Are they called pile drivers? Is that literally what they are? Because I've heard the word before, but they are pumping. I think the wrestling move is named after the implement, and so they're smashing holes at and it's the most annoying thing. There are shelves that have fallen off walls in some of the nearby houses. We talk of little else in Brentford at the moment, Mike, except this absolute constant background thumping through parts of the day of the loudest. I think it's like a hammer or a pile driver or whatever it's called. That's not soothing, Mike.
Well, it's not the top of my list, but
that's not remotely. So people have been driven mad by it. But other things like the ocean is a great. I mean, ocean and rainfall quite similar. Maybe it kind of tells
you. Or maybe like a fireplace. Why is that?
Roaring fire. Why are some sounds soothing? That sounds like a tongue twister. But I like it. Why are some? Is that the one you said was going to be alliteration? That's why are some sounds soothing? Some sounds soothing. Why are some sounds soothing and some sounds aren't? I like it. Okay, you're on. But construction sites, I think you're going to be in a minority of one, a minority of Mike when it comes to the idea of construction sites being soothing. I like the sound of children playing. I find that very soothing, very uplifting. Like the sound from a playground or something like that. But a construction site? Paul is in Washington, Tyne and Weir. Paul, question or answer?
It's a question, James.
Carry on.
I want to know what electric eels were referred to before electricity was invented.
Some of the questions today are just flirting with the kind of white dog poo and baby pigeons, aren't they? Isn't this more of a riddle than a mystery?
No, it's a genuine question. Before electricity was invented, what were they known as?
Well, I don't know.
Well, neither do I. That's why I'm asking.
Well, maybe it was still called an electric eel. Maybe that's where they got the name from, for electricity.
Well, maybe, yeah. I've never thought of that, but there must be a better answer than that.
It'd have a Latin name. What was an electric eel called before we knew what electricity was? I mean, yeah. I think you might be disappointed. I wonder whether it's actually the other way round, and the name for electricity is linked to what the eel was called in the first place. But I don't know what I'm talking about, Paul, as you've probably picked up by now. Right, eels. So electric eels. Medicinal side effects, soothing sounds, fountain pens, lions and alarms, decomposing bodies in space, automatic doors, and contagious yawning. We need to start getting some answers, and I will accept answers to any of those questions. Thank you, Paul. Chris is in Haverhill. Chris, question or answer?
Answer, mate.
Carry on, Chris.
I got the answer to the why the fountain pen has to be used to do signatures on birth certificates and marriage certificates and all that.
Splendid.
It's because they use a special ink. It's what they call an India ink. It's a solvent-based ink that cannot be removed by like a normal water-based ink. So you can splash water on it or whatever, and it'll still be there. And you can only apply that using a fountain pen because it's quite a thick ink.
So it's not the pen. The pen is the mode of delivery of the ink. It's the ink that's specified, and that is a very specific type of ink.
Yeah. My wife did part time as a registrar, and they had to use. They basically used cheap. I'm not disparaging them, but the Parker Vector pens we all used to use at school.
Yeah.
Because after a while, the ink would just destroy the fountain pen. So they threw them away because they're only like £10 a time. She tried to use one of my fountain pens, and that's rather a lot more money. And I told her no.
Do you know what happened then? As soon as you said I don't want to disparage the pen, I thought that's quite an odd thing to say. I bet he's a pen enthusiast, and you are. I don't know why that was a giveaway. Why would that be a giveaway? Because you were concerned about the feelings of a pen.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
fair enough. There's anthropomorphism going on. So you didn't want, in case there were any Parker Vector pens listening, you as more of a Mont Blanc man, you didn't want that Parker pen to be upset, did you?
Upset? No, I didn't want to hurt their feelings because they're good entry level pens. But if they clog up, you just throw it away. You're not going to burst into tears or get upset.
Not going to trouble your insurers, are you? Or anything like that. So are you a big collector of fountain pens?
I'm not. I've reached the pens that I wanted. So you mentioned that I've got a Mont Blanc fountain pen. I've also got a Visconti, which is made out of lava from Mount Etna.
Flipping heck.
Yeah. It's the Visconti Homo sapiens Dark Age. Have a look.
I will do now.
It's a beautiful pen. It's organic in your hand.
What do you do, right? Because, most people don't use pens much anymore.
I work in agricultural genomics, and I take notes all day, every day.
And you couldn't do it? Could you do it on a tablet, or do you choose to do it with pen and paper?
I choose to do it with pen and paper because I just enjoy the feeling of it.
I can tell you do, and I will. What's it called again? I'm going to look that up after the show.
It's Visconti, Visconti.
Thank you.
Homo sapiens.
Wow.
Dark Age.
It's an interesting one. Thank you, Chris. I love that. I mean, you know how much I love this job. But round of applause. Qualifications, king of pens. There we go. Lovely stuff. So did you pick up on that as well? When Chris said, I don't want to disparage the pen, you thought, aye, there's a bit more to this than meets the eye. And there was. I love that. I'm basically the Columbo of the radio waves. It's coming up to 12:30. Amelia Cox has your headlines.
Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. This is LBC.
Flipping heck. I'm not the only one, but slightly gobsmacked by the cost of the pen that Chris was just raving about. £765. So you know what to get me for Christmas this year. I've reached an age now where I've started to trust myself not to lose things. So I currently wear a watch. And I think I can treat myself. I forgot my bag upstairs, Keith. It wasn't, and I still haven't got my drink that was in it. So I don't know what the point was of asking somebody to go upstairs and get it. But thanks for the reminder, Keith. I didn't lose it. If I'd left it on a bus, last thing I left on a bus was 2 rather good bottles of wine. And although I was very annoyed about that, I was also quite pleased because I thought that's made someone's night. That's what a lovely thing to find. I mean, ideally that you'd have handed them in, but it's not the. Well, thanks. Better late than never, eh? So I could trust. What I'm saying is I might buy myself a nice pen, but I don't know that it will be quite that nice at this stage in proceedings. And I should have mentioned something a little earlier about A-levels. Good luck to everyone who was getting their results there. I really do hope that you've got the results that you wanted, but I am conscious that not everybody would have done. So it is. We are in that zone today as a family. I am a very, very proud dad. So I thank you to everyone who's inquired after that. I'm a very, very proud dad today, but I do know that it won't be good news for everybody. And that's why I don't like to, I think, go bonkers on A-level results day, because it can be bad news for many, many people as well as good news. So It doesn't matter as much as you think it does at the moment. The problem with saying that to people who've done badly or less well than they hoped is that you are also saying it to the people who've done as well as they hoped or done really well. And that doesn't feel fair to say to them it's not quite as big a deal as you think it is. But that's what I'm saying. I'm also going to remind you of, in fact, this is something that makes me laugh so much. It's a tradition. Everyone thinks about Jeremy Clarkson on A-level results day, who got very bad A-level results from his extremely expensive public school, and yet somehow mysteriously managed to be quite successful in life. But the person I always think of on A-level results day is Baron Bethel, who posted a tweet that is among the most tin-eared and unself-aware tweets that I can ever remember seeing in my life. So the fifth Baron Bethel, who ended up almost inevitably being a minister in a Conservative government, a hereditary peer who went to Harrow. So when you say that privilege sometimes is invisible to the people that have it. That line I love about being born 3-0 up and thinking you've scored a hat-trick, which is my own variation on a classic American line about being born on third base and thinking you'd scored a triple. People who go to schools like mine have no idea how lucky they are. So I don't know whether you find this as funny as I do, but the fifth Baron Bethel, a hereditary peer who attended Harrow, tweeted a few years ago, "I fluffed my A-levels. It taught me how to hustle. I was the first to get a place in university, and I haven't stopped ever since." That is obviously a typo, but quite a funny typo. He said, "Grades are great, but grit and perseverance win every time." So you were wondering why I found it so funny until that last line, right? Why do you keep going on about what school he went to and the fact that he's a hereditary peer with an automatic seat in the House of Lords? Grades are great, but grit and perseverance win every time, said the Harrow-educated fifth Baron Bethel a few years ago. And that's the story I always think of on A-level day. Back to Mystery Hour. Richard is in Staines. Richard, question or answer?
Hello, it is a question, please.
Carry on.
It's how far away is a rainbow? It depends where you are. Yes, true. So I was outside my house, I think it was March time, and I was talking to a neighbour, and there was a rainbow. And I just thought to myself, how far away is that? Is it 200 metres? Is it a mile? Is it, I don't know.
Okay. I mean, it really does depend on where you are.
It does, yeah. So obviously,
so how do we answer the question then? Because look, what if your mate is a mile down the road looking at the same rainbow? How can your question possibly work?
See, I don't think that's possible. I think it's the sort of point of how far away is the point of refraction to the viewer?
Neither of us know what that means. Let's be honest, Richard. You don't know what that means any more than I do. The point of refraction.
Sort of. I don't know. What point is a rainbow for?
How long is a piece of string? That's what you're asking.
Oh, my mother used to give me that one.
How far away is a rainbow? I don't. Well, listen. This. So it depends where you know. Well, I'm going to put it on the board, but I think.
Well, thank you.
It's not quite gone as you hoped. This because it is like asking how long a piece of string is it not? Of course it is. Because you can see two people can see the same rainbow from two very different places.
Can they though?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Because I was thinking it like, I said to a researcher, she said, I'm in East London. And I said, well, we wouldn't be seeing the same rainbow. We might not even be under the same rain cloud.
That's true. That's all getting a bit philosophical now, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
It's in a parallel universe. All right. It may be that your question, it may be me that's sounding silly rather than you. That is often what happens with these kind of things. It may turn out you knew exactly what the point of refraction meant, and I was the only one that didn't, but you were too polite to say so.
Well, it's taken me a while to dream up the question.
I like the question. How far away is a rainbow? Up above the streets and houses. Rainbow climbing high. What's the next bit? Someone will know. My inbox is. I just broke my inbox now. Everyone over the age of about 45 is going to be bombarding me with the lyrics to a long forgotten television program. Richard, thank you. Rainbows, electric eels, soothing sounds, side effects. Done the fountain pen. Chris got that one. Lions. Decomposing bodies in space, automatic doors and yawning. Answers, please. We need to clear the board of questions and make sure there are spaces for people to get through with answers. 0345 6060 973. Pete's in Mannings Heath. Pete, question or answer?
I'm sorry, but it's a question.
Yeah, I mean, we're cutting it fine now, Pete. I'm not going to lie to you. Go on, what have you got?
Right. Global warming is quite relevant at the moment,
yes.
And there's a lot of land erosion on the sea, on properties which butt up to the beaches.
I am going to like this question, I can tell.
So,
yes, I know what you're going to say.
Do you still own the land after it's collapsed?
Well, how can you if it's not there?
Well, it's still there. It's just 100 foot lower.
So So the boundaries... So if you draw a box out the back of your house that is currently your garden...
Yes.
And then the cliff collapses...
Yes.
Does the box still apply? You now own
Correct.
some beach.
Albeit lower down, yes.
And ex-cliff.
Yes.
That is a brilliant question. What do you think?
I can't see any reason why not.
Nor can
because, but I don't know.
Nor can I. That's a superb question. I mean, you wouldn't even be able to visit it, would you? You'd have to buy a massive rope or a ladder or something like that. Or I'm not even joking. Or build a staircase. But it's still mine. But it can't be yours because I think beach. There's different laws about beaches. I think it's quite hard to own beaches.
But you have private beaches.
You do, but I think they're historical anomalies.
In the quiet of ancient halls, a book of secrets softly calls, pages filled with mystic lore, a guide to magic and so much more. Bound in wisdom, crafted fine, in every line enchantments shine. For those who seek the arcane's might, this tome reveals the hidden light. Arcane guide with knowledge deep, unlocking spells in shadow steep. In every test, it lights the way through trials faced by night and day.
I think the Rambling Association, I remember this story, the right to roam, it hit beaches. Anyway, it's a great question, and I'm going to put it on the board.
Fantastic.
Okay. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Carl's in Exeter. Carl, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
The electric eel.
Yes.
It wasn't called an electric eel in the language of the thing. They're from the Amazon basin.
Are they?
And from that area. And the language they speak generally is called Tupi.
Yeah.
And the language that I know is Rubacha.
Sorry, 2p or not 2p?
Not 2p.
Carry on.
Yeah. So they're called, and I'm making this a long time since I did this. It sounds like puraki.
Okay.
They're called a puraki eel, or just a puraki, which means something that numbs or something that stings in the original language. The first people to visit that area were Jesuit priests and things like that.
Yeah.
But they
missionaries.
Didn't visit the area and do any form of etymology on the animals until the 1780s, 1790s.
Right.
Which was after electricity had been generated first time. So the original language is Puraki, but actually we went in, as colonizers, went in much, much later and said, oh, it's electricity. Of course, it never was. It's just one that numbs. It is actually electricity, but...
Qualifications?
Qualifications. I have a really good friend, or I had a really good friend, she's dead now, called Sheila Tremaine, who spent 20 years translating the Bible into Rubacha on behalf of the Bible Society. And one of the things she had to translate was this word, Tubachi. So when I went over to visit her and went with her to meet the Rubachi tribe, I pointed out as an electric eel, and they told me it was a puraki, and I think I'm saying that right. But this is 15 years ago for me. So
this is a moment of mystery hour magic, and you don't know why yet. I mean, partly that is one of the most extraordinary qualifications that I've ever heard, up to and including you referencing your late friend who was responsible for translating the Bible into that Brazilian dialect.
Yeah.
But as you were speaking, I'm not going to read out his full name. Someone called Sam WhatsApped to say, oh, someone's been on Wikipedia. And then you smashed that allegation so completely into smithereens with such an extraordinarily detailed account of how you have come to know this that I can't let the two go. I can't. I mean, I'm very tempted to shame Sam publicly by providing more details but to accuse you of having looked it up without you knowing that was the accusation that was unfolding in my inbox, and then you. I mean, just providing literally chapter and verse, because that's a bloody biblical reference, isn't it? So literally chapter and verse. That's a moment of, I'm going to give you one of these. Oh, no, I'm not. I want to give him a Ray Liotta. Can I give him a Ray
Liotta? And you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC.
Well, I'll be very pleased to tell Sheila's family that that's happened.
It was a beautiful moment. Thank you. You get a round of applause as well, but I think Keith's lost it, so I'll just do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Carl. 12:45 is the time.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
Rebecca's been in touch. She says, has Keith fallen asleep? Let's find out. No, he's all right. He's all right. It's all that talk of yawning, isn't it? 12:47 is the time. Marty's in Belfast. Marty, question or answer?
I have an answer, James. Good afternoon from a very wet Belfast. How are you doing?
I'm very well indeed. What is your answer?
It's an answer to the decomposition of my body if I was chucked out of a spaceship.
Or anybody else's body, to be clear.
Or anybody else's body, yes. The end result is no, we would not decompose. What would happen is our blood and bodily fluids would boil rapidly. Some of our organs would explode internally, and we would freeze really, really rapidly, because it's a little bit chilly in space.
Why would they boil? Why would our organs boil?
It's to do with the difference in temperature between our the internal core temperature and the temperature around us. And we would remain pretty much freeze-dried until somebody came along and brought us in.
Like a pot noodle? No,
no.
Like space ice cream?
Like space ice cream. Is correct. Unless Sigourney Weaver came along in one of her aliens' spaceships
and hydrated
us on, and then we would just rot away.
Qualifications?
I think I'm about to give you a question, a mystery hour first. My qualifications come from the same event as I answered a question about 2.5 years ago. We went to a Professor Brian Cox gig.
And someone asked him the same question.
Someone asked him exactly the same question.
I see. Great minds, eh? Great minds.
Absolutely.
I love that. And it gets you one of these. Another one of these.
Fantastic.
No, that's 2 for 2. That was a very good value night out for you, wasn't it? It got you 2 mystery hour rounds of applause. I've been to one of Brian's gigs, and I found it amazing, but I realised afterwards I hadn't really understood any of it. That's what a great communicator he is. I actually thought I was enjoying it while I was in there. And then afterwards, I couldn't have told you anything on the bus home. I said, "Oh, you'll never guess about black holes." Let's go to Manchester next. Jake's there. Jake, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on, Jake.
Automatic doors open slower when you walk towards them at a fast pace.
They do. They actually do. They actually do.
Well, at a faster pace because they have sensors on the doors to stop you getting too close and stop you colliding with it and clobbering you on the head.
But why? I don't understand how that works. Because surely, the faster you're going, the faster they should open, so that you can slide through them without.
No, because if you get too close, and the door's designed to stop if it sees someone walking towards it, and get hit by it, or anything in the way. So if you're in the way, i.e., you're too close to the door, from going towards it too fast, the door's reaction is to stop. Now that works on a sliding door and a swing door and every other type of automatic door you can think of.
So it stops rather than slows down?
For a sliding door, it slows down.
I owe Johan an apology. I think I called him... Did you hear Johan's question?
I did, yes. That's why I rang up.
Did I call him a silly sausage? I think I called him a silly sausage.
Something like that, yeah.
And I was the silly sausage, Jake, wasn't I? actually. It was me. It was me that was right. It was me, though. I got it right. So it's absolutely true. It's a safety feature. Yes. A safety feature. Well, hang on a minute. What are your qualifications?
I'm an automatic door engineer for a small company.
that's pretty conclusive, isn't it? Crikey. Oh, well, get a round of applause. I was desperately trying to think of a good joke there, Jake, but I suspect you've heard them all before.
Yeah, most of them, yeah.
12:51 is the time. Top man, I love that. And Johan, I'm sorry, man. I genuinely am. I still don't quite get it, but he's an automatic door engineer, so he obviously knows what he's talking about. Daniel is in Florida, Vero Beach. Daniel, question or answer?
It's an answer, James.
Carry on, thank you.
It's to your caller who had the question about side effects with medicine.
Yes.
It's ultimately, there are people who'd be better qualified to refer to the biological aspect of this, but my main suspicion is that it would be a commercial thing. When pharmaceutical companies want to develop a drug, they get 25 years of a patent, and it takes usually about 10 years of that patent to develop it. So if there are just a few side effects, they want to bring it out to market as quickly as possible, and they're not really going to care about your caller being on the toilet for the morning.
So they could perhaps have improved it, but the commercial imperative makes it unnecessary. And also, depending on what it is treating, it's a price worth paying for the efficacy.
Absolutely, yeah. It's my suspicion on the biological side is that you don't get something for nothing. There's always going to be some kind of side effect.
Maybe,
but ultimately, when you've got only, I guess the most recent kind of, or the most famous recent drug to become like a generic would be Viagra. So whoever developed the Viagra, they only made money on it for 15 years. After that, the formula became available as a generic. So
qualifications?
Used to work in the pharmaceutical industry.
That'll do nicely. What do you do now, if you don't mind me asking?
I run an art gallery, obviously.
In Florida?
Yes, yeah. My brother-in-law is a very talented artist, and I have the pleasure of running his art gallery for him.
I don't know why. I just automatically thought of Die Hard. Was it No, Beverly Hills Cop 2. That's gone over your head a bit. Isn't there an art? Is that California? Is an art gallery in? I don't know why I thought of that, but
one of my friends back home said it was more like Mickey Blue Eyes.
Oh, I like that as well. Actually,
yeah.
Round of applause for Daniel. Fascinating. Oh, I love this. This is a great mystery. No, thank you. 12:53 is the time. I still need answers about the if your garden collapses because you live on a cliff, do you still own the same space? Like the deeds have coming out the back of your house? Why are some sounds more soothing than others? And the question, the mystery hour, the patron saint of mystery hour, why can't you have a lion? Why don't you want to have a lion on the days when you can have a lion, but you always want a lion on the days when you can't have a lion? Lie in, not lion. Sorry. Someone sent me a message earlier saying, what's the question about lions? And I thought, what are they talking about? And I've just realised, as I said, lie in. So there you go. John's in Biggin Hill. John, question or answer?
Hello, James.
Hello, John.
The rainbow question.
Yes.
The point of refraction is the raindrop itself. So you've got a band of rain coming towards you, sunlight shining through it. The eye sees millions and millions and millions of points of light from the raindrop. And of course, with a magnifying glass, you can have two people looking at the same magnifying glass from different distances, both seeing the image. And the point of refraction is the magnifying glass. It's a bit like a physical magnifying glass on a fast scale.
Great answer. So really, the rainbow is about as far away as the rain is.
Yes.
It's exactly as far away as the rain is. So it does depend on where you are, but that is the answer that you need.
Yeah.
Qualifications?
O-level physics, I'm afraid.
Is that all? I thought you were going to say teacher.
No, just an intelligent idiot.
Oh, beautifully explained. Round of applause for John, please.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. I got an E in physics, so that will be why I feel a little bit humbled. I didn't even do an O-level. I did one of those newfangled GCSEs. David's in Richmond. David, question or answer?
answer, James.
Carry on.
Very quick. It's not a full answer, but it's about the yawning question.
Yes.
So the actual age, I'm not sure of, but I can tell you the mechanism, which is really important.
Yeah.
We have mirror neurons in the brain, in the medial prefrontal cortex. And we've had those from time immemorial because human beings are essentially a group species. And to get on with the group, it's very useful to pick up the expressions of people around you and then mirror them. And it's quite recent, this discovery of the mirror neurons. So if someone yawns, you yawn. If someone looks, happy, you reflect the animations and expressions of the people around you in order to ingratiate yourself to the group.
Put them at their ease. I like that.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Exactly.
So really, go on.
Certain conditions, autism, severe trauma, which is why people become mute, that's shut down.
Oh, wow.
And that's why it's really difficult to help people. You have to be very patient to help people. They're withdrawn, they don't look at you, there's no eye contact. People who've suffered severe things. So you have to reactivate those mirror neurons and help them move forwards. Quite interesting.
It is interesting, and so hard to pinpoint, but it will be when babies are reaching the sort of points of consciousness that they start doing the mirroring innately. So they do it in a world without language. They would do some of the mirroring, do the yawning. Qualifications?
Exactly. Medic, can I add one other point, which may come back for everyone? It's about masks. So when people wore masks, developmental delay occurred in babies. And that's why they look at you. They look at you really puzzled when you've got a mask on.
Oh, that's quite poignant. Round of applause for David. A bonus information at the end there that I think everyone will remember. It's 12:58. That's almost it. Ben's in St Albans. Ben, question or answer?
Hello. It's an answer to the side effects of the medicine.
Oh, so we're never going to find out about the cliffs.
So it's just a little bit more on the biology on top of what your previous caller was discussing.
On the side effects. You've only got 30 seconds. I'm going to have to put you in fast forward.
Okay, basically, the body's a very complex system, and a lot of what medicines target, whatever they're targeting, can also knock onto other areas of the body as well. Okay, so for example, ibuprofen targets something called COX, which is COX, which is part of the inflammatory cascade.
Well, doesn't it depend where the pain is?
No, it goes anywhere and affects COX. But COX
it affects arms as well, doesn't it?
Oh, right, yeah. But COX is also involved in protection of the stomach lining and regulation of blood flow in the kidney. So you also get, if you take too much or you take it for too long, then it will have knock-on effects in those systems. So,
I'm out of time. I'm out of time. You've got it. Qualifications?
I'm a vet.
Round of applause. Who's my favourite this week? It's impossible to say, isn't it? It's got to be the guy with the electric eel story, hasn't it? Yeah, of course it does. Was it Carl? Carl in Exeter wins this week's Mystery Hour board game. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, where you'll also find all of LBC's shows to catch up on, as well as all of Global's live radio stations. So download the Global Player for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Tom Swarbrick. But now standing in for Sheila Fogarty, it's Matthew Wright. 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 Sheila Fogarty.